So she's fully on board. Yes. But she's yes,
No, but I mean, you just.
That's awesome. So basically, what's your idea?
Oh, great, thanks.
That's usually how it works. You bring up an idea and you do it.
yeah, she was
I noticed it.
So after that,
one administration.
All right.
She's part of the advisory.
She's very precious.
Difference between the public affairs, one, two, three, four. Next, water.
Pledge of Allegiance. How about our pro tem leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Look at the screen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
All right, item number one, roll call. Christie, could you conduct the roll call, please?
Director Levine?
Here.
Director Burns? On his way? Director Coleman?
Here.
Director Lewitt?
Here.
Director Barneski?
Here.
Director Floro?
I think Director Burns is in the parking lot, so he should be here in just a second. Item number two is approve the agenda. Yes?
There's no questions.
All right, thank you for moving on to number three, public comments.
Still need a motion and a second.
Motion and a second to approve the
The
agenda.
agenda is published. I made it.
Second was,
Second,
I think,
all right,
voice vote.
voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay. Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Moving on now to item three. Yes. Public comments. Members of the public may now address the board of directors on matters not appearing on the agenda. Thank you. But within the jurisdiction of the board, no action shall be taken on any matter not appearing on the agenda. Josie, are there any public comment cards submitted?
And this time,
Thank you. Number four, 2024 performance measures and accomplishments. Item 4A is the fiscal year 24-25 departmental goals and performance measures. Don, you were.
Thank you, Andy. Or Director, sorry, President Coalition.
Andy is fine.
So welcome everyone to our annual strategic planning meeting. As was mentioned, Dave will be coming in here at some point in the near future. We do this workshop every year, and we try to do it off-site, so it's a more casual, interactive environment. And the strategic plan workshop every other year is done earlier in the year so they can form the budget process, since this is the middle of the 2-year budget process. The timing of the strategic plan workshop is not quite as important, but what we wanted to do was dive into, first of all, some accomplishments and updates of the department goals. We're trying to do that very efficiently with about 1 to 2 minutes per division manager. And then we'll get into the current state of artificial intelligence implementation. Since the board workshop on artificial intelligence, we've made some headway into developing our artificial intelligence plan, which I will touch on. But I'll provide an update on where we are in pure water funding and financing. Then Ursula will talk about a biannual customer satisfaction survey. And then the main event will be Joe and Dave of Water Supply Reliability and Diversification Update. I wanted to mention, since we've rescheduled this, we have a couple of people that are here for the managers. I'll just start with Bert, Brill. I think you've seen him for Veronica. Amelia Dawson is our management analyst in finance, so she's here for Brian. Vicki Clark is here for Mike, you all know her. And who else we have? Chris Hendricks is here for Jessica Forte. So they will be presenting the division updates for those special solutions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Elia's going to run the slides, and then everybody is prompted and teamed up, and you get automatically increase or progress to the next slide after 2 minutes.
I do want to have my presidential prerogatives, just, I guess, speak whenever I feel like. And I do want to talk about this meeting and the importance of this meeting. And I do think this is one of, if not the most important meeting that we have in this district every year. Before I ran, I watched this meeting on Zoom. I think you were meeting out at Westlake or something, and I was really stunned. I was really stunned that we were analyzing. We had goals, we set them, and I know we set them, and then we looked back to see if we met them, and if we didn't meet them, we made a plan for how to meet them in the future. And you'd be surprised how many organizations don't have anything like that. So I appreciate everybody being here, and this is important, and this is why we have the staff that we do.
Well, I did forget to mention the thing that Dave told me was most important. Our goal is to finish at 4:30. And even though I said we're going to do this very officially, if anybody has questions, feel free to interrupt these other presenters. So go ahead, Julia.
All right, I'll kick it off with human resources. In HR, we completed 2 district-wide studies, an organizational and staffing analysis, and a total compensation study refresh. The organizational and staffing analysis did a thorough dive into all areas of the district and sought input from all district employees to develop recommendations to structure the organization and add positions to effectively meet current and future operational needs over the next 10 years, including plans to staff a full-scale pure water project. Implementation plans have been underway over the past year and will continue over the next 10 years. The total compensation study refreshed the data that was last collected in 2018 and resulted in recommended salary adjustments to help ensure the district remains competitive in terms of salary and benefits, which of course adds to our ability to effectively attract, retain, and engage a highly effective workforce. And we successfully worked with each of the district's bargaining units to swiftly implement the recommendations within only a few months of the conclusion of the study. So I'm talking about customer service for affairs, and this year our venue was selected as the Association of Government Contact Center Professional Customer Service Award of Distinction for Innovation in Customer Service. We were selected because we did the service in customer service field. We did programs and field staff, and we are the first water district to ever win this award, which is a national award. It usually goes to cities. We were selected because we saved an estimated 63 million gallons of water and working with 240 customers of large or unrepaired water leaks in the first year of the program. And so this was a very prestigious award we were happy to accept this year.
Just me. All right, I'm up, even though I'm just fresh off the road. Hope everybody's doing well.
So external affairs, resource conservation, I think many things that we can highlight, but I think the significance for us in 2024 was launching officially the irrigation retrofit program, irrigation efficiency retrofit. It's a mouthful. And you can see the stats there in front of you. Obviously, we're meeting customers where they are, not just coming out of the drought, but really going forward with the new conservation regulations. I think the other thing that I want to note, because Don told me I had 25 minutes, is that, I think another big milestone for us in resource conservation, really as a district, is we got through the first official reporting year of the urban water use objective. And so it's not just a big deal, big kudos to our small but mighty resource conservation team, but we also just submitted the first variance data request because as many of you know, our data is really good because we've been in the business of budget-based rates since 2015. So we're on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge of submitting that data variance request to say our LAM data, our land area measurement data is better than yours to get our overarching budget larger. So those are the things that I'm pleased to highlight on behalf of resource conservation.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here to talk about a piece of legislation that I'm really proud to have been a part of, and that's Senator Ben Allen's SB 394. And as I've talked about, this bill is aimed to crack down on water theft from hydrants, protecting this very valuable resource. This bill is sponsored by ACWA, Association of California Water Agencies, and Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. We were able to secure Senator Ben Allen as an author. This bill not only strengthens enforcement, but underscores our role as a leader in water policy and innovation across the state of California. Las Virgenes loses around $150,000 to $300,000 a year in all types of water theft, and the ability to enforce this type of theft on hydrant will help to recover some revenue. It's significant twicefold. First, it safeguards our water supply against theft and waste, and second, it brings statewide recognition to Las Virgenes for proactively addressing a growing challenge throughout the state. At its core, this reflects our value of transparency, community engagement, fiscal responsibility, securing a reliable water future for generations to come. And this Wednesday, Dave and I are flying up to Sacramento, where Dave will be the lead testimony as the bill moves on the assembly side.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here standing in for Mike. And accomplishments in the Public Affairs Department this year saw Pure Water outreach evolve in coordination with the current phase of the overall project. We executed 3 more community events as part of the award-winning Pure Water Tasting Series, which included Pure Pizza, the return of the ever so popular Pure Beer, and of course, bringing Pure Coffee locally to Oak Park. We also released season 2 of the Full Circle podcast, featuring both President Tordesky and Director Lewitt, who's joining us for that gentleman, where we took a deeper look at the current phase of the project and covered really important updates, including the cost update, as well as the impact on customers. This podcast season also highlighted one of the department's greatest accomplishments, which was obtaining that endorsement or those endorsements from both the Ventura and Los Angeles County Medical Associations for the Pure Water project. As trusted pillars of any community, we know that doctors hold a lot of influence on public perception, so formally getting them on board with the project is paramount to maintaining trust. Public Affairs team also released the new and improved Future of Water 2.0 video, which included timely updates and additional useful context. And finally, after postponing due to the LA fires, Public Affairs also executed the Beyond the Surface event at the reservoir, which generated widespread media coverage of the initiative and also aligns with the district's commitment to innovation and water supply reliability. So whether through joint events, tours, or our multifaceted digital outreach, Public Affairs efforts continue to prioritize trust, transparency, and safety in engagement.
All right, it's up to me. So since we're going to wrap this whole meeting up with AI,
decided to put it to the test on the topic of the agitator replacement. And here's what AI came up with us. The JPA board approved a sole source contract from BDP Industries, the original manufacturer, for $1.2 million to replace the agitators and their dollies. This project is high priority capital improvement fund for 22-23. After nearly 20 years of service and 5 years beyond their expected life, the agitator had become obsolete and unsupported electronically and hydraulically. This agitator took over a year to build, and this was one of the biggest maintenance projects Rancho to date. Staff has completed a full replacement of the 2 compost agitators, which are essential for mixing and agitating the compost. This isn't the first time this facility has undertaken such a project. The original agitators were from 1994 and replaced in 2003. The successful completion of the latest replacement ensures the continued reliability and operation and efficiency of the composting process and vital service to the region.
Next. Hi, everybody. Afternoon. I'm taking over for Jess today. As far as the engineering facilities or engineering and tech services updates, one of the big accomplishments this year was the commissioning of the Callejas Municipal Water District and the LV Municipal Water District interconnection. The connection serves as a new source of water for both districts in case of emergency wildfire and maintenance shutdowns, and it expands the possibility for regional water supply collaboration. One of the other major accomplishments was the contract with the Walsh team is progressing for the advanced water treatment facility and the RO concentrate pipeline to 30% design. Bringing these both to 30% design keeps the project on schedule for commissioning, bringing the district closer to the regional compliance and increased water supply. One of the other bigger projects this year was the Malibu Lake siphon replacement project. The siphon replacement project gave the team the opportunity to work collaboratively with multiple agencies as well as the Malibu Lakes HOA, and to improve the vital selection of the sewer transmission system. Also, one of the other major accomplishments was the district-wide collaboration of the Tyler Munis to accept credit card payments. And that was in conjunction with Ivo's group and also finance and Sophia's group as well, so that we can take electronic payments now for customers, so they don't have to mail in checks anymore, like the old-fashioned way. And then for Sophia's group, they were able to take healthcare payments from retirees. So that's it. Alex.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to just quickly give an update on the water systems. Over the past year, I'd like to highlight some of our major projects that we've completed. We've made some good headway on our Cornell Pump Station Improvement Project and completed upgrades at our LB2 pump station. In addition to that, we were able to complete and start up our 4 stationary emergency generators at our Seminole, Jet Smith, Cold Canyon, and Twin Lakes pump stations. Significance of these projects include replacing outdated equipment for critical pump stations to ensure reliability when delivering high quality water during normal operations and shutdowns. That's it.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about the reclamation side. I want to highlight an important infrastructure upgrade recently completed at Rancho Las Virgenes composting facility. The replacement of the buried hot water loops pipelines. This project addressed 2 critical pipelines, the supply and the return lines of the hot water loop, which have become severely deteriorated over time. The lines were leaking and not only posed a maintenance burden, but also directly impacted the performance of our boiler and heat exchanger systems. These are essential for maintaining temperature control and operational efficiency throughout the facility. To solve this, we installed brand new stainless steel piping, replacing the older failing infrastructure. The use of stainless steel is a major improvement, offering greater durability, resistance to corrosion, and overall longevity. By investing in higher quality materials now, we're preventing more serious failures in the future and avoiding recurring costs associated with short-term fixes or emergency repairs. This upgrade reflects on our ongoing commitment to protecting public health and environment by ensuring safe, reliable operations. It also aligns with our core business values, delivering innovative and efficient water operations for our community. Not only does the installation improve system reliability, but also contributes to long-term cost savings for the district. In short, this project is a great example of proactive asset management, addressing issues before they escalate, improving system performance, and supporting our mission of sustainable, high-quality water reclamation services.
Okay, aside from the major improvements information systems did with the SCADA systems at Rancho, I want to highlight the strides that our team made with the Mobile First initiative. As could be observed during the Franklin and Palisades fire, staff was able to access information remotely using the iGreen system, and also we were able to help staff with GIS installations and accessing of asset information and making corrections as necessary. We were able to install 100 instances of ArcGIS, which is the software used for asset management. Operations staff also had access to the iGreen portal, and we continue to make improvement on those systems because we want to be able to have technology meet staff where they are. That's my
And for finance and accounting, this year the district received the Government Finance Officers Association Triple Crown Award. Receiving the Triple Crown Award stands out as a prestigious honor. Less than 1% of all governmental agencies in the United States receive this award. To earn the GFOA Triple Crown Award, the district must excel in 3 key areas of financial transparency and accountability. First is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This recognizes the district's commitment to clear, accurate, and comprehensive financial reporting. Second is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This demonstrates a well-organized, easy-to-understand budget that reflects sound financial planning and transparency. And third is the Popular Annual Financial Reporting Award. This signifies the district's ability to communicate complex financial data in a way that's understandable for the general public. By meeting all 3 criteria, the district demonstrates a top-tier commitment to financial transparency, accountability, and responsible management of public funds. Achieving the Triple Crown is no easy feat, but it highlights the dedication of the district to uphold the highest standards in public finance.
So we're open to the feedback, or there's also the packet full detail updates for all the other missions that we're on.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a few. This spreadsheet you issued, on the first item, engineering and external affairs, achieve state mandated water use standards by 2027. A minimum of non-efficient use of water by customers. I was wondering how in the world we project that, or how can we achieve that? I assume you have check boxes, transparency, and highly effective workforce. How's that accomplished?
I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time hearing you, honestly, down here.
I turned my hearing aid way up. I'll try it again. Achieve statement, the first part of the spreadsheet, engineering and external affairs, second item down.
That's the AB 1668.
You have checked 2 boxes, transparency and engagement, and highly effective workforce. What is the state mandate? Okay.
So those are referencing the conservation as a California way of life regulations, is what those are. So we're just saying effectively at a high level that we're going to comply, which we,
Well, we're going to try and comply.
Correct. And we currently are.
Okay, it wasn't clear to me how this occurred, or if it did occur, I should say it did occur. Next item down, question on is customer service. Item 4, past due balances of June 30th each year by shut-offs. And apparently the proposal is to be less than 350,000. And current, it looks like the actual is 310. Why would we propose to be less than 350 if the current is 310?
It actually varies month per month, and right now, when we first started tracking this,
It was during COVID where we didn't have any disconnections. And so we weren't sure what it was going to be with the new SB 998 because we cannot disconnect now until there's 60 days past. So when we first set this metric up, we were going by historically what the past due balances were around. But with COVID, we could not disconnect. And now that we can, we're able to adjust that. So next year, you're going to see it's actually adjust to 400,000 because it's hovering closer to that with the new 60-day shut-off requirements.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. In the next one down, on the same section of the spreadsheet, the last item, achieve a positive rating for customer service at at least 3 for 5 customer service. I see we just got the GFOA award. How does this relate? This puzzled me. I have a question mark. I don't understand it.
So this does not relate to the GFOA award at all.
Okay.
So customer service goal is, if you actually expand on that.
So this is the survey we did in 2023, and then we're going to be doing another one, which I'm going to present on later on in the day, and that will explain to you the new survey we're going to do. We're going to have some new questions as well as some similar questions, so that way we can compare and see how we've grown or changed over the last 2 years.
I'd really like to know how we proceed.
So later on the agenda, there's an item for the next survey. So we'll compare those 2 survey results. So we can talk about that more with this survey item.
Well, a couple weeks ago, we decided the board voted to support somebody, mainly because it was perception. To me, it's a critical issue. We have this huge thing coming, and one way or another, we're going to get everybody on board as much as we can. The next item down was on the public information. I couldn't read it on my computer, I couldn't read it here. It's the second item on the public performance measurement. I don't know what you're talking about.
So it looks like in the print version, the text is cut off a little bit.
I even tried it in the, I have it on my computer, I have a big screen, I put it up, and I still couldn't read it.
Yeah, it's still such a person.
We can send you a version of that.
Well, I'd like to talk about it now.
It looks like what we're referring to there is the Pure Water Project and the public outreach to support implementation of the Pure Water Project.
So the continuity of conducting tours and events for the Pure Water Project is to engage the public and get that customer satisfaction and perception for pure water for the next survey.
That one has to do with the number of tours, I believe. Primarily going through the demonstration facility.
Oh, how are we promoting that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How are we promoting tours so we don't have a truck driving around with flags saying, go to the water tour? You know?
So we take sign up, we promote tours at all of the community events.
Right again.
We promote tours at all of the community events that we host, as well as community events that we table at. So we take signups there. It's on both of our websites, both LVMWD as well as our Pure H2O. We do direct outreach to community groups, including the cities and schools, and then we include it in our newsletter as well. We also do direct emailing, so we'll do like email blasts for summer tours or quarterlies. So we're kind of hitting all points there.
For the elected officials, we have like, for example, tours coming up for the city of Glendale and city of Burbank, and every time we go meet with elected officials, tours for elected officials, Jeremy helps set up those tours, and Ricky does most of the tours.
And so, how do you, I want to reach everybody and we can't. So, if the argument is this is the best we can do, well, we know we can better, or is it good?
Well, I think we have a pretty robust outreach program between the schools, the events, the community events, the peer, I'll just call it peer events, peer coffee, etc. We promoted, occasionally through what's either sent out on social media, through newsletters, through customer contacts, through meetings with elected officials. So I think we do pretty robust outreach to promote tours in the water facility.
We also promote in the Acorn and other local newspapers in our community as well. So we still do print advertising for the tours and as well as all of our events.
I just want to make a comment to all of us. It seems like, why would you not want to go on a tour of the pure water facility? But if you speak to the average person who thinks the water comes from their faucet and they haven't really thought beyond that, which is most of the people I think live in our community, why would they want to go on a tour? I mean, people don't want to, they don't want to go on a tour. And I don't think, unless you give them $50 for a 20-minute tour, they're going to respond. So I think anything we do is a positive. And we just built that demo plan for the tours. We built, the main reason I voted for it, the number one reason, was to give our operators training and experience and give us experience with a $3 million plan. So we have a $500 million plan. We're ahead of it.
It's a good job.
But if people come to the tour and get public acceptance, great. We don't have a lot of non-public acceptance. So it's not like we have people that are coming at us saying, we don't trust you, this is a terrible thing, and then we don't have the tours. I think we have public acceptance, and the ones who wanted to come, they know about it, and I think most people don't care, just my opinion.
I care deeply about the respect.
Yeah, right.
We have talked to, Don and I have talked about the idea of creating a strategic communication plan. We've done this before, but the focus was drought and drought messaging. And we've talked about creating a strategic communication plan that included pure water. We have a new position of Director of External Affairs, and that is one idea that Don and I have talked about would be really helpful. And the thought would be, we have certain communication priorities that each of you as board members reflects what is a priority for you, and then we have events throughout the year, or maybe several years, that all support that. So I think we are thinking about how can we be a little bit more thoughtful about how our communication supports the overall messages that we're trying to get out.
Good, thank you.
I thought my ears were young, but what I'm realizing is I'm even having a little trouble hearing. I'm wondering if we might just call it audible here and shift the tables a little bit. Would that be helpful?
Yeah,
because
the acoustics are terrible.
I feel like we can't be effective unless we hear each other well.
Right.
And so I have an idea. If we just take these tables here and kind of
what about the power cables in front of us? We're gonna hit those?
Let's involve our,
yeah, closer. Could we try to just take this table and rotate it, and this table and rotate it? Yeah.
Push the tables closer to the center.
Screen. I threw a monkey wrench at it. I feel like we're straining to hear each other. Yeah, the ceiling is
All these absorb
oh, you guys. Can we pull them in?
I made a real mess out of
So rude.
But I feel like you guys are so, are you okay?
You're at 75%.
Yeah, I walk and come, you know, I'm understanding.
My hearing is way up.
Well, if anyone was feeling insecure about hearing, I was having the same trouble before. What did you say?
Okay, well, one of the comments on the same, under engineering and technical services, actually, what was the name? I think I talked to Amelia about before. It's on the grants I'm looking for. Where is it? What's the water acquisition?
Finance and accounts.
There it is. I've noticed in here that a requirement of the finance and accounting compliance with all federal, state, and local grants through internal controls. And I was discussing this with Amelia for the meeting. She said, yes, she had the same question. She spoke to Brian. Brian said, good, you write the policy, which I thought was terrific. I want to give a shout out to Brian and Amelia for that. Item on information systems. The number of clicks on monthly phishing, smashing tests. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is one of those goals where less is actually more. So we try as much as possible on a monthly basis. We send out tests to almost everyone. You must have gotten some emails thinking coming from like a hacker or some bad actor. And the less clicks we have, the better. That means our training programs are working. And if someone clicks, we try and train them on how to catch these bad emails or bad links. So less is actually more.
I'm sure that we all get it.
So
everyone
does such a good job that I don't even click on anything.
That's why I didn't answer it either.
Somebody else responding, follow my other fault.
When we find the email, there's an option to flag it as phishing.
Yeah.
And when we do that, it says congratulations, you identified one of, it doesn't say iVote, one of iVote's.
Well, I was wicked guess.
Trap. On the flip side of that, if you click it, you've got a mandatory training.
Yeah.
But they become very sophisticated, yes, they look like real emails.
Yeah.
So, one more, I said there are a few questions. On resource conservation, it says, very down, yeah, monthly average of customers within water budget. And you're 85, saying proposed at 85%, right now you're estimated at 70%. That's a tough road to lead there, Mr. Jones. You got any progress?
For the water budgets?
Yeah, you're meeting water budget.
This is
This is for registrations, right?
It says monthly average of customers within water budget.
Oh, 85%. We're actually hovering at about almost, we were at 79% last month. I think we're at 76% right now, so we're doing pretty darn good.
We were getting, we were averaging above 85% during the drought.
And even the year following the drought. So what's happening is customers have slipped.
Sure, yeah. And it's probably just about, is that about max? That's what you're gonna do.
It's going back to what we historically have been.
Right.
What was really interesting about this drought is we thought the rebound effect, so going from water conservation, going back to old habits, In past droughts, it happened relatively quickly. With this go around, it was very much delayed. It was delayed by a little over a year before we started seeing people go back to their patterns.
That made a bigger impact. I think I've covered everything I really wanted to chat about in this spreadsheet.
Fantastic. Excuse me, are there any more board questions or comments? Thank you. Seeing none, let's move on to number 5, artificial intelligence strategies. Sorry, I nailed citizenship the wrong way. This is going to be fascinating. Ivo.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to stand just so my voice can have a greater range. So I want all of us to imagine this presentation like the slides that we're doing today. If they were done by an artificial intelligence agent, looking at our data sets, structured and unstructured, put together and presented to the board within the space of like a minute or two, and we all capture what the district's data is, and in no time we have a discussion. We could even provide us with a summary. We can also imagine if leaks are detected, and before we lose a job, repair crews would know about them and go out and do repairs. We could also analyze large samples of a large report. Sometimes we get reports that are like 200 pages, 700 pages, and it's condensed for you, and you're given the highlight for you to be able to report on. I was having a discussion the other day with Director Lewitt, and he wanted to know about questions he could ask. You could put it into a system and say, what types of questions as the district board director could I ask on these topics? And there are systems that can help you with. I bring all of these examples to let us know that artificial intelligence, the way it is today, is helping us to dream. We can dream big, we can reach now with what our imaginations are, and it's possible. So nothing is impossible anymore. Now, a few months ago, we had a presentation from Scott Kosolski. I'm not butchering the last name. Talking about artificial intelligence. I'm sure by now we all know what AI is. And this presentation is supposed to tell us the state of AI within the district and the way forward. So I'll go through what I have with these 5 topics. Why AI, why now? And then I'll touch on the future point of view that Scott gave us a few months back. And then some possibilities and use cases, the district's AI efforts, what we're doing now. And then, of course, we have an AI strategy RFP. In fact, that RFP closed, we have a bunch of proposals. So I'll touch on that a little bit later. So first topic, why AI, why now? So I will read, with this ability to analyze and generate insights from large structured and non-structured data sets, Gen AI has the potential to help utilities uncover trends, drive innovation, optimize resources, allocation, and support data-driven decision-making at all levels and in all roles. It will also enable water sector professionals to address higher value tasks by augmenting rather than replacing the water workforce. I drew that from LVMWD's Upflow magazine from the April edition. And I put some of the words there in highlight. We're talking about potential. So when I started off by talking about us dreaming, so that's the potential. There are things that are possible. So it's limitless. Do not limit yourself to what artificial intelligence can do. At all levels, everyone is involved. It's not just for IT, it's for everyone. The staff, the board, our customers, and then all roles. So you could be a supervisor, you could be the GM, whomever should be able to tap out the potential from these. And it's augmenting rather than replacing. AI is not going to take jobs. AI is going to be your co-pilot. AI is going to be your help in whatever you're doing. So we'll touch on a little bit of that. And I pulled some statistics from the International Data Corporation that say that knowledge workers spend 2.5 hours a day searching for information. And for organizations our size, that amounts to almost $250,000 loss. So let's let that sink in. Then more on why AI, why now. We have a lot of manual processes that could be automated. We have a workforce that's constrained, and we have industry pressures. We have a drought that needs to be addressed. We have aging assets. We're about to implement an asset management plan to help with replacing some of our aging assets. And customers are also aware that artificial intelligence is available, so if we are not at the forefront of it, we will have questions. And of course, regulatory expectations. There are three things I wanted to bring up regarding artificial intelligence. So there's the good old-fashioned AI, predictive AI. That's what has been existing for all this time. You meet someone, they tell you AI, oh, we talked about it in the 1960s, in the 70s, 80s. That's where they use linear regression, mathematical formulas, statistics to use structured data, provide you with information. So the key word there is structure. Now moving forward to today, generative AI is bringing in the unstructured aspect. So you have data that's structured in databases, and we have papers, images, pictures, videos, sound, everything is pulled together and provide us with information. It's generating new content. So you put in something new is given to you, and you can take advantage of it. The next phase, and we're almost in that next phase now, is the agentic AI, where action is being taken on your behalf. You could have an agent that says, if I get an email from Dave, respond with such and such, and it does it for you at a specific time. So things like that. But that could be expanded into other aspects. If you see high usage, tell this customer to go in and turn off your faucet, something like that. I'm just making things up so we can imagine. The key word here is for us to dream and think. Future point of view review. When Scott was talking to us, the three areas. I'll start from the left to the right, where you had the laggards, you had the herd, and of course the elite. When he was doing this presentation to us, I kind of felt like we were between the laggards and the herd. But from then until now, we've made a lot of strides. I can comfortably say we're at the herd phase, and we can now start taking advantage of some of the green areas that you mentioned about as Wilderness Opportunity Zones. So that's where we are. And now, what are some of the possible use cases? Talk about asset optimization, board memos preparation. Everyone in here, we all do board presentations, and sometimes it takes a while for us to put the structure together and tweak. With artificial intelligence, the time that it takes for us has been drastically cut down, and we hope to improve on that. Predictive maintenance. With an asset management system, having an AI module, we'll be able to do a lot more on that. I talked about leak detection before. Smart customer support and call center. For the longest time, we've been talking about a chatbot that help with answering some questions for customers. So now's the time for us to dream and do things like that. Procurement process. If we're down with some items on our inventory, systems could tell you, hey, you're already down, and actually automatically reach out to vendors, obtain 3 quotes for you, and present you with what's the best option for you to move forward. That's still the dream. I'm not saying we have those systems now. We need to be able to dream that way. Water quality monitoring. We did a few pilot. We did a pilot case for water aging with the iGreen platform, and there are situations where water quality is being monitored as it moves along the pipeline, and serves alerts accordingly. Knowledge retention. Daryl and I were at ACE last week, and one of the things about knowledge retention that we heard was you could interview someone who's about to retire, get the voice, and you ask them questions. It's not like interviewing them about everything that they do, and if there are pertinent questions that will always occur, issues that may come up, they get those answers and they train a model and ask those same questions to the retiree, ask the AI bot and see if the answers are the same. They have some really good results off of that. So things like that, that's part of the dream that we will be having. Project management, and while John was here, we did a few things on energy optimization. Continue with our district efforts on the predictive maintenance, predictive AI. We did some machine learning with the pure water demo facility. Policy development, we've developed policy already for artificial intelligence of the district. The applications that we have adopted and approved would be ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot. Those are at level. There's so many other AI platforms, but these are the ones that we've approved and to dig deeper into them. A lot of the other ones are built on these main ones. So it shows some people have worked on Notebook LM, and so on. Like the next one, Madison AI. Madison AI is built on top of ChatGPT. And I want to talk a little bit about Madison AI, because I made reference to the board reports. Madison AI is a platform. We went to a conference last year and saw this presentation. When we came back, we decided to do a pilot on it. Madison AI looks at our entire website, looks at our district codes, looks at the attachments that we have for board reports, and you could go on that platform and ask a question on pure water, a question on SCADA, and it brings everything for you in a summarized manner. Not only that, here's where the generative AI comes in. You want to write a staff report, you tell it, write a staff report for SCADA improvement, for pure water change, or whatever, anything. It brings the framework for you, along with all the historical facts and the amount of money spent, and you can now frame your board report off of that. So we've been really happy with that, and we continue to make improvements. It doesn't only do board reports, it does some other things. Staff has been happy with that. And with K2I, we work on transcribing our board videos, and staff is part of GovAI coalition that's being spearheaded by the city of San Jose, where we talk about policies, incident response plans that may come up as a result of AI. AI can be really good, it can also be really bad, because there are bad people that could use those tools to harm us. So we have policies and fact sheets that we develop through the coalition. The district now has an AI team in place, and we developed an AI strategy and roadmap RFP. And that RFP, the scope of that RFP would be to assess, we're looking at an assessment of current status, looking at people, processes, and technology. We also developed a strategic roadmap for AI, having a vision and objectives of what we hope to accomplish. There are tools out there that help the district in carrying out its objectives and goals. We're hoping that these experts will guide the district, guide staff into getting them. Of course, there will be a part of risk assessment. I talked about bioreactors, amines, cybersecurity, acceptable use. Not all AIs are not equal. People could use them to harm us. And then we want to train and upskill staff. Staff would need training and the right type of training to get us to where we need to be. So what are the future opportunities? Of course, climate modeling, drought prediction. If the drought is coming, we want to know and plan accordingly. Hazard mitigation, fire, earthquake security, things like that. We want to be able to plan. The idea is to pre-plan. Water security. How do we source our water and be water self-sufficient? The overarching goal is that we want to build a culture that's centered on artificial intelligence within the staff and the district as a whole. AI, I will close with the last thing, AI won't replace people, but people who use AI will outperform those who do not. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I guess I can start with some questions. So my concept of, didn't we talk about, and you mentioned this, but I didn't recognize it in your presentation, but didn't we talk about having an internal AI that could go through all of our agendas, could go through all the reports, could go through all the videos, and and transcribe it, and then make it searchable so that we don't lose the information that we have internally?
Yes, absolutely. We've started off with Madison AI, which is helping us with that. And part of the transcription, in fact, the transcription we can do now with the videos that we already have on our website. So Madison AI is the beginning of that process. Yes.
It does harvest data from all the old documents.
And I had a discussion with Ivo, it goes back about 15 years, which is a lot of data.
Wow, that's awesome.
The RFP that Ivo mentioned is actually probably the most important thing in this presentation because that's going to develop a strategy for how we move forward.
Nice.
Because you might recall from the future point of view presentation, we don't want everybody, we want to focus. Yeah. Make sure that we're strategically using AI.
Nice. Very good.
So let me just mention something. As many of you may know, I'm the person who brought Future Point of View to the district. We had a 3-hour seminar. I've attended a lot of other meetings on this. In 3 years from now, not even 5, if we are not totally integrated with AI, we will be behind every other water company and every other utility in the entire country, if not the world. It can't move slowly. It has to be something that moves very, very fast. And I don't know what the Madison, have you recorded people yet that are giving us their testimony so that we can answer and ask them questions, that we actually accomplished it? Because you said that since we had that seminar, we've come a long way. What have we come a long way with? I didn't hear a long way. I saw all this list of stuff, I read it all, and I didn't see what we've actually tried to accomplish. Because if we're a year from now, and we haven't integrated it into some of our systems, we have not done our job.
Yeah, when I mentioned that we've come a long way, there are 2 aspects. One is the non-technology aspect, policies that we're putting in place to make sure that, number one, we're safe, that we're able to govern the AI, and being part of Gov AI coalition. The second aspect is the technology. We've licensed ChatGPT, we've licensed Madison AI, and Madison AI, maybe when you get a chance, we can help you play with the system, with the platform, and you can see how powerful is helping, especially staff that do staff reports. So there are other aspects, and when we go to when we go to conferences and people talk about AI, they're mostly talking about the predictive AI, where it's the same thing that we did back in the 60s and 70s, but it's just done faster. So you're using linear regression, statistics, you're just presenting results. But generative AI, you're creating new content that has never existed. And so the low-hanging fruit that we have here at the district is the staff report. It's the getting information quickly, as fast as possible, and presenting it. So we focus on that area. That doesn't mean we're going to stop there. We will incrementally work on that.
So just one more question. How many of our staff are actually using it?
Most of us.
That's great. Terrific. Are these staff reports that we read in our agendas, are they coming out of AI now?
More and more. Yeah. What we're trying to do too is there's usually in the staff reports there's a long discussion section. And maybe don't always have time to read through all of it, right? Right. But so what's beautiful about AI is you could upload that discussion section and tell it to write a quick summary, and it does it in 5 seconds. And it's usually like right on the spot.
That's like my
really powerful.
My presentation today, I put it through Gemini, and they said I want it to be no more than a minute and a half, and that's what it gave me.
Then you read it after it's done.
Yeah,
and that's the key.
But that's the human editor on AI stuff. One thing that I lived in the list on here is that I've used a lot, probably more than anybody, is the image creator that's available on Bing.com. Yes, they use AI. So it used to be like when you put a PowerPoint presentation together and you're trying to put images on your slide decks, a lot of times you have a hard time finding things, and this doesn't quite mesh with or go with whatever your talking points are. But with the image creator, you can create any image that you could conceivably imagine, as long as it's not. There's parameters. There won't be any environment or anything. That's just yeah. So it has parameters. You can't just create anything. Violence it won't be. Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
And also to give Ivo and finance credit too, another opportunity that we didn't mention is we're using a software called OpenGov to do procurement. And within that, there's an AI element of it. So if we're needing to purchase, let's say, fire hydrants or valves, or if it's a public work improvement project, a construction project, it can actually help develop a request for proposals or request for bids. Rather than in the past, we would look online and maybe look at some different examples to create one. It automatically creates it for us. Once again, we have to review it and make sure that it's accurate, but it's just the efficiency that it provides to staff goes a long way.
So so that's searching out RFPs from all over the country.
That we could use for our own.
Correct. Well, it searches out RFPs that are posted on. So OpenGov is a very widely used program for government. So I will go back to this slide 8 here, because this is really the crux of the next steps. So the future point of view presentation, you may recall that he cautioned us about letting AI, basically letting, what do you call it, an AI free-for-all, and being focused on AI, making sure that we have a strategy, and making sure that we're careful and responsive, and yet, very progressive with our AI. And, the way that the water district is, we can't fail, right? We can't implement AI on a SCADA system or on our systems, because if we fail our AI, we be very public. So this RFP that's actually closed, we'll be bringing a recommendation to the board in the next month or two. Really takes us to the next step of what the future point of view recommended, which was developing a comprehensive strategy about how to move forward and incorporate AI into our daily lives.
So we used AI to create RFP for our AI
actually, we have Madison's AI software, which it was for internal for us to be able to find board reports and things like that quickly, but it has been an amazing tool. When I have a customer that escalates to me, I can go on and just quickly type in, anything or say anything for adjustments. What is our league adjustment policy? It will pull up every board report, when it was adopted, any amendments, and I can supply that to the customer like that. So.
Well, I have to say, you have a lot of opportunities like that,
So I think also AI can help each of you as board members, so we should set you up with Madison AI, because as we're talking about things, and let's say, it's not jogging your memory, you can type in, tell me everything about whatever the top of Malibu Lake siphon project, and it will show you, our board actions, the background, why we are doing the project. It's really been powerful. I'll share too, in the last year, we have shifted from maybe a year and a half. There was a time, this is not uncommon in government agencies, where the websites for AI are actually blocked. And that is because there's risks associated with it. So we've come a long ways in terms of, from a posture of defensive to actually encouraging the use of AI. And I think this RFP and this roadmap is really going to help us be smart about where do we use AI. And what I would describe, we were kind of dabbling in AI. We were trying it here and there. We were excited about all of them, but there wasn't really like a real strategic thought process that went into, is this the right place to implement AI? Is this going to provide the best business results? And that's what this RFP is really going to do. Make sure that we're investing in AI in the right places, and also avoid areas where it's not going to provide a great benefit.
Well,
That's exciting.
I have one, I don't know if it's a criticism, but it's a comment. I'm using chat bots. That's what, I'm not getting good results. I'm really, and I wonder, we noted in here that we're using a chat bot. What's the feedback then?
So, we actually
I'm upset with Home Depot. We'll get right back to you. 2-3 days later, I had to go out to Home Depot and ask them in person.
So we actually don't use a chatbot yet. We're looking at potentially having a chatbot to be able to get you what you need from the website. But I don't know if I can expand on this, but basically AI is just part of the stuff you put into it, right?
Right.
And it learns all the time. So that's another reason why we want to be strategic, because we don't want people to be frustrated with what we come up with.
Good.
We want it to be useful.
I went out there, the young woman found it in 2 seconds and took care of it, but I had to drive out there. Said, we'll get right back, never did. It's interesting.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Climate modeling, you mentioned climate modeling in the future. Yes. Drought prediction. How? No, the why is self-evident, the how is crazy.
Yeah, the how is, it goes back to the dream I was talking about. We have weather data, we have other studies that other people have done. AI has the capability of pulling all of this unstructured and the structured data together to tell you, here are the patterns I'm seeing. And then now, with those patterns and trends, you can use those to predict, to say, maybe in the next 2-3 months, we may have such and such. Maybe in the next week or so, based on the patterns that I'm seeing.
Accuracy, I guess, has become the trouble. Because I attended a presentation 7-8 years ago up north with scientists said within these bands of probability, this will happen. We'll get more rain and snow, etc. So I was always puzzled. They could predict that then, but can we do any better now? Because
the more data, the better. That's the best we can do. The more data you have, it increases the probability of getting accuracy.
Accuracy.
Okay, just put the farmer's almanac right into the AI.
Yeah, it just the idea of it used to be the thing when the stuff started fractals. You had a butterfly flap its wings in Tahiti, and you got a thunderstorm in Houston. Cause and effect.
All right, let me add brought it up before, I forgot one thing. There are, in my opinion, besides the fact that we all run so wonderfully, and we do. I mean, I've been impressed, having been here now 3 years, at how effectively we do run a water division that the general public has no idea about. But besides the pure water plant and the ocean well, which should help us tremendously, AI is the next biggest thing. And eventually, it's going to deliver the chemicals. Now, we'll probably have to put them there, but it's going to decide everything we do. We're going to program it, and it's going to work for us. So, in terms of what we're doing, going back just a little bit to strategic external affairs, which I know we've got a new person hopefully that's coming in that's going to do this. You know, besides being in our newsletter, we should be in 9192 93102, or whatever the zip code is, 91302. We should be in the Calabasas magazine. We should be, I'm running a fire division that we put out publicity releases every single 2 weeks. And we're being picked up in magazines everywhere. Now, I know it might not seem logical that if somebody reads about us up in San Francisco, it makes sense. But it does, because it puts our name out there in every little bit of recognition, something that in all the years this district has existed probably really wasn't thought about that way. So the thinking now is you have to think locally, even if we're local, because companies hear about it. They come to Calabasas, they want to locate here. I think we talked about this last year. We need to work more with our city councils and all the people that we know, both staff and electeds, so that they know what we're doing. And that means putting together material constantly. I am out there all the time talking about it. Even today at the meeting that we were all at, there were people who, oh yeah, I tasted your beer. Well, that's great. Maybe we need to get that done every 2 months. More events, more things so that people know what we're doing.
I support beer every 2 months.
Yeah.
I'll bet you do it more often. I'm so old, I thought when you guys said AI, I thought you were talking about Allen Iverson.
He's retired. All right, gentlemen, ladies, let's move on, I guess, to item number 6, Pure Water Project Readiness Triumphal, only the most important thing in our lives.
All right, so that's me. So I'll stand outside the front of the screen. So we've shared this graphic with you before. That basically outlines our funding and financing strategy for pure water. Now the difference between this time and last time is last time I just had colored boxes, but this time Stephen Bear made it pretty. So that's the main difference. Otherwise, it's what you said, what you've seen before. But I wanted to take a moment because I think we have a couple of board members who may not have seen this. So what this does is it walks through how we're going to fund every single aspect of the pure water project. So starting up here in the left is where we are at now, and those are the JPA-owned facilities. So we have Tapia, which is JPA-owned, and well, Melbourne Creek. I know the JPA doesn't own it, but that's where we're disposing of the water. And then the advanced water purification facility is going to be paid for by the JPA. So then the question is, well, how is the LV customers going to pay for the our portion of the advanced water purification facility? I don't want to contribute to that. So the way that we're going to pay for the WPF is sanitation pays 100%, and then that's for the construction of the project. And the reason why we went there was because, if you step back and think about the reason why we originally went in this direction after the workshops with all the stakeholders, it was a means to address disposal of the purified or recycled water to avoid metal. So we see the construction of the facility as a disposal sanitation cost. So then, after it becomes treated, it comes out and it goes into Las Virgenes Reservoir, at which time it becomes an asset, right? So then, potable water pays a wholesale rate, which pays for the treatment of the water inside the WPF, and the TWSD pays a readiness surcharge at the wholesale water rate. So it goes from being a disposal to an asset. So then that's when it goes from sanitation to potable water. And then after the potable water system, it goes to the well site filtration system, and that gets distributed out. So as it gets distributed out, our tier 4 will include the wholesale water rate that we mentioned back there, and then also the filtration cost and the cost for it to process through the reservoir. So then it becomes basically a source of water that the potable water system is purchasing along with the net water. And TWSD is paying the same thing for their system. And then we've discussed about, well, what happens if TWSD doesn't take their part? If TWSD doesn't take their part, then it spills, because it does actually spill, but it becomes ours. And then if we take it, then we just pay the filtration and maintenance cost. So basically that is the concept of how we're going to put pure water from construction to operations.
Hey, Don.
Yes?
Explain to me the potable tier 4, 5, why is that just?
So the direction of the board has been for pure water as the highest cost water to be borne by the most users, so the most efficient users. So as we develop our rate structures, which you'll see tomorrow, the most efficient, lowest cost water always goes towards the efficient tier. So as long as pure water costs more than MWD wholesale water, then they'll be attributed to tier 4. If at some point in the future the MWD cost is more than the pure water cost, then it'll flip over.
There's no legal ramifications from that whole discussion we had previously?
Steve's colleague, Keith, has been involved in our rate structures and every discussion that we've had. And the way that most agencies that have multiple sources of water develop their tiers, the lower cost water typically goes to tier 1 and the higher cost water goes to tier 2. And as part of developing tier structures, that was what makes it really defensible because of the ties specific costs of the tiers.
Yeah, it's actually the most defensible means for establishing tiers because we actually have different water with different cost structures.
Literally have different water. Literally different cost structures.
There's other agencies that have groundwater, cheapest water you can get, that's all tier 1. Tier 3.
Oh yeah, we'll be tier 3 now. Well, after tomorrow, if the board supports the rate structure. Today it's tier 4.
So what happens? WSD doesn't, you said, they may not take the water. They don't need it. It's cheaper for them to buy met water or from Vegas.
Right. So then,
what happens to that water?
So then we purchase it, but if we purchase it, we're paying the filtration cost and the maintenance cost. TWSD already paid the wholesale water rate. So it actually is a cheaper water for us if they don't take it.
They paid for it?
Well, they pay for it when it comes out the plant.
Why would they pay for it?
Because they have to. Because as part of the Joint Powers Agreement, they have the right to, and they have to pay for their cost of the water.
That's a fair share.
Yes.
Do we anticipate that not lose it? No, we don't.
I might have missed this, but at one point we were talking about plumbing the water to the track flow, or just having them, we would keep their share, then give them other compensation, other water from our share. Did we ever decide what we're doing on that issue?
Yes, I don't think that how they get the water, I don't think is fully determined, but we're not tracking the volume. So if they have an acre foot, they're going to get an acre foot. Those actual molecules may or may not ever get to them.
Right now, it's not plumbed to that.
Well, so they'll get it delivered through the interconnection, and then there's also another connection on it. So they will get water from us through this connection.
Or not get a connection, right? We talked about maybe them not getting this water, but getting our other water.
Yeah, that is possible through what you would call an exchange arrangement. So we've thought about that, and I think it's possible, but there are some challenges in the cost. I think always with this kind of program, it's really critical that you can actually physically deliver the water. And that's important to Mark, and I've talked with Mark about that. So that's a priority for Mark, and I agree with him on that. I do think that there are opportunities where we could work out a virtual or in lieu delivery program where they basically take an extra gallon of water from Metropolitan and we take a gallon less. And that's possible we could do that if it works out to be lower cost for everybody involved. The trick will be, I don't think that's gonna be less costly than using this water. And the reason is, the cost for the AWPF, think of that as like a sunk cost in order for regulatory compliance. We both have an obligation for regulatory compliance. We cannot discharge the water to the creek. So because of that, we have to pay for the AWPF treatment regardless. And so when you look at the cost structure past that, it's relatively low. So this is going to be relatively low cost water, not counting the AWPF cost.
You have to build infrastructure.
So, Daryl might be
Yeah, they have the
on
interconnection we have the interconnection with Cayugas, so we can wheel them the water through the interconnection at Cayugas, and we also have another interconnection with TWSV that has been active in the past at the top of King. So there is some ways to provide them the water through interconnections.
So our current plan is to deliver them the same amount of water that they have rights to. But I think it's important to step back and not try to track the molecules, because the water's gonna go into the system. And then some water is gonna go out of our system into TWS's system, but those actual pure water molecules are just gonna go wherever they're exposed.
They're gonna mix with the water we have from that well. We do have to move water through the interconnect anyways for maintaining water quality, because it's a mile or so of water diameter pipe that you don't want to just sit there. So we gotta move water anyways, so that's why the direct draw through Cayugas, it makes sense to do.
But there's really three options. There's the in-move as mentioned, and then there's use of potentially two different interconnections. It's either the Cayugas interconnection, which is a large 30-inch main, requires pumping to get that water to Triumph and Cayugas' service area. And then we are also looking at direct delivery to Triumph. As Daryl mentioned, it's a smaller pipe though. It may require some additional infrastructure improvements both on our side and Triumph to make that happen.
And it doesn't have to be like when Westlake's online either. It could be throughout the whole 12-month period to balance out the exchange of water.
And technically, I mean, this water, we're building the AWPF for regulatory reasons, so the water, as I control or someone said, is free. So, I mean,
well, it's not
free.
Well, they're actually raising one of things so the water's free, right? But then we gotta get it to it. That's like treated.
after it's been purified, is really hard to cost.
The operation may need filtration and pumping it up to the levels.
So it would cost less than buying it from Metropolitan, you're just indicating it, so what I was thinking is they would take more Metropolitan would bill us, and we overbill them for the difference. So
The cost will be more, and part of it is that box right there. So it says sanitation pays 100%. What we're talking about is 100% of the capital cost. Capital, and then potable water is going to pay the operating cost.
So this wholesale rate makes sense. Yeah, that wholesale rate is the treatment cost.
And the rationale is we're making potable water so that it's logical that the potable water enterprise can pay for that.
Eric mentioned one of the avenues was to do pumping, which would be an incremental cost, right? Is that cost factored into?
We would have to consider that.
Yeah, and that pumping is primarily, I think what you were referring to is the interconnection.
Yes.
And at the Cayugas interconnection, that underground pump station, there are big pumps in there, but that pumping is only required for the triumphal portion of the water, not for the LV part. So it would be likely part of their cost profile.
The big pumps at the pump station, pump the water both ways?
Yeah, well, it could through a PR station backwards to us and pump to Cayugas.
And what's the general plan use of the equipment? Is that pumping Cayugas or to us?
Well, that's the value and the utility of it. It can do either, depending on what the circumstances are. But under a normal operation for pure water, it would be to pump water from
want to see, I think, is you want to see a diversity of funding sources. So have diversity of funding sources. So we have, and so on the left is the total, and this is the loss margin of share. So with ES, $228.5 million. SRF is $50 million, so SRF has a $50 million cap. But within the SRF program, we're also getting $7.2 million of water recycling loan. And then, as Dave shared with you the other day, our $3 million water recycling grant has been increased to $15 million. And I think it's important to note that the SRF water recycling loan and our water recycling grant is in the current IUP, which we are sending a support letter for, and it's scheduled to be adopted soon by the State Water Resource Control Board, so we want to support that. Jeremy. The Bureau of Reclamation is looking like $24.2 million. That's the initial $10 million plus an additional $14 million.
Reclamation a loan or a grant?
Bureau of Reclamation grant.
Didn't say that.
And then PAYGO is what we've been saving up for since the last rate study. Over the last 5 years ago, we knew we had to do something. We weren't quite sure if we were going to pure water or some other treatment. But within that rate study, we knew that we had to do something enough to justify being able to build up some additional PAYGO to reduce the funding costs. And then municipal bonds will just be whatever we have left to finance. And then as part of the municipal bonds, we'll have to have a discussion at a later date as to whether or not we would want to have the GBA issue the debt or whether each individual district has to issue the debt.
So there's a gap of $135 million between loss readiness and the total, so it's triumphant.
Correct.
How much due diligence have we done to make sure that we come up with $135 million?
So we work very closely with TWA Crown, and they have actually, so they have their portion of the PAYGO saved up already. They have their portion of the WIFIA SRF water recycling. So basically, everything except for the municipal bonds, they already have. So we're in good shape with trying to put water recycling district.
Because the only thing is PAYGO, because everything else we applied for, we just get a piece of it.
Correct.
So it's just the PAYGO.
Yeah, so they have the PAYGO.
I mean, like, how do you know they have the PAYGO?
We see it in the financial statements.
So we watch that and make sure it's there.
Yeah, and actually, so we work very closely with them. And, we applied for all these loans and grants, but they actually, especially with the SRF, they had a very key component of that, and they had to provide just as much information as Lost Purchase did. So Vicki, who's our finance director, Mark has participated in ratings calls, so they answered every question that every funding agency has asked, and has, they frankly have done as much work as we have to get these funding sources.
But they're currently wrapping up the rate study, right?
Yeah, and that's why we did a joint RFP for a rate study, and we both hired water resource economics.
But as part of that, they're looking at some, whatever they have to do, municipal bonds or whatever, they're gonna pull that into the rates.
So the real question is when we get to the municipal bonds, whether or not it'd be better for us, what the spread would be if our rating's higher than their rating to get out to bonds. But we know their rating's not that much different than our rating at this time. Okay, so where are we with all of these? So WIFIA is scheduled to close in July. It was scheduled to close in June, but they lost 2/3 of their staff. So it's moving a little slower because for some reason in the federal government, people are moving to the state or local government. But we have every indication that we'll close WIFIA. As I mentioned, SRF is currently, the intended use plan is currently under consideration that provides for the additional funding, especially the grant portion. And I don't foresee any issues with that being adopted. The big next hurdle for the SRF funding, and actually for the WIFIA funding too, is closing the environmental process, which I think we're making pretty good progress, and we should be done with that in a couple months, hopefully, unless America has different information. The Bureau of Reclamation, we're finalizing and detailing the additional $14 million. Like I said, the PAYGO, we have a bank on both sides. And then municipal bonds is for a later discussion. One thing that's not up here that we are discussing is perhaps looking at some short-term funding. Because with WIFIA, you lock in a rate when you sign the document, and then if you don't draw on it, you could lock in a lower rate in the future if rates are lower as soon as you draw on it. If rates are higher, you still get the initial rate. So if we anticipate rates to go down, we might want to consider some short-term financing for long-term savings. We'll work with PFM to determine what the best mechanism is for that and how much that will move forward.
And you talked about having rates potentially going up because of this project. I was asking how much. Is that in the BIGO column or that's a separate column?
No, so the rates would have to cover, the future rates would have to cover the loans. So in the financial model for the rates that you're going to see tomorrow, it anticipates the debt payments. So that's why you see the rates going up more in the later years.
You only have that option once, right?
To refinance it, yeah, you only have the option once, and it can only go down, it can't go up. So that's a big deal. Because if rates go up like 2%, we can say, you know what, that 4%, let's take that.
Is it possible to see the amount of rates in that chart? You go back to that chart, is it possible to see it?
No, it's just,
You know what I'm saying, so we'll know, when we look at funding, how much of the funding is actually caused by raising rates.
So from the last rate study, the $36 million that we have for PAYGO came from increased rates 5 years ago. And we would save that up to live up to PAYGO. And then the future rates will look at the debt service. So it'll cover the debt service payment.
Kind of what I'm asking is, these are all the buckets of where the money's coming from.
Right.
And another bucket will be, we'll be raising rates.
Right.
3%, just for this, not anything else. To pay for pure water, 1%, whatever the number is. So should that be listed as one of our buckets where the money's coming from?
Well, all of these, except for the grants, kind of rates. So, I mean, in the future, if you want, we could have what the rate impact of each individual line item is.
It would just be nice to see how much the ratepayers are going to pay into this project every month. Just for this.
Yeah, so we've shown that before, and it increases, I use Joe's, it increases about a latte a year, but it's cumulative. So over, it's probably better if we highlight that tomorrow. So we have that on the rate study. I don't want to say the exact number.
It sounds like you want to see what it would be like with and without pure water, so you can see the impact of pure water.
It's a little tricky because it depends on the customer, the budget, and how much water they use.
Yeah,
On average, and not all at once because it's an incremental increase over time. But on average, it's last time I crunched the numbers, it was about 17% increase. Based on the
17% increase per bill. So if your bill's $100, it's $117 after.
So the way we've structured the rates is that the cost of pure water is more burdened by inefficient customers. It's more burdened by inefficient customers. So the way that the rates are structured that they go review tomorrow, based on the board's policy principles, was to minimize the rate impact on efficient customers. So then that's why we showed you that the top tier is where a lot of the cost of pure water is. So there's not like every single customer will pay a different part of pure water. And then there's not really a no pure water option for regulatory compliance. So we can highlight for you again tomorrow what the difference is for pure water versus no pure water. But it's important to keep in mind that that's not
a viable
option because we would have had to do something to be regulatory.
So I know we have to do it, and that's not my point. It's like people say to us, you're building a $500 million project, how much will it affect my rates? So you can't say, oh, that's, you just paid back the loan. Because there is a real number,
right?
Even though we were forced to do it, I'm not saying we should not do it. We have reasons, I just want to let them know, because they see this $500 million number, and this district's never had a $200 million project.
Well,
Yeah,
we have some numbers tomorrow, so it's right there. Okay, $7.
And keep in mind, it's not just your water bill, total water bill, it's your sanitation bill. Yeah.
It's split up across.
Well, the increases, well, there's increases in large related to the capital expense on the sanitation bill, but it's the operating costs on the water.
And actually, so, you know, I don't have this slide memorized, the exact dollar amount, but when we did the last update, we showed you the cost. There was a presentation that we had that had a slide that the direct impact of pure water. So we'll just, but it's an average for every song. So we'll tell you the exact numbers.
We can give you that tomorrow.
Okay.
Just one final note on this, the federal funding sources, I'm sure you've heard, you know, the concern about federal funding and the possibility that federal funding could be rescinded. We have heard stories from some of our colleagues about certain federal programs being either backed off or funding rescinded. Because of that, we are moving as quickly as we can to execute the improvements, both the WIFIA loan and also the Bureau of Reclamation grant. We don't think those programs will be impacted, but we still think it makes sense to move on them. The good thing about the grant is the way that the second tranche of funding is being handled, it's actually an amendment to the prior grant agreement, so it's very simple. And so we're trying to get that moving forward, and then the WIFIA loan also want to sign the loan documents before there is any concern. And one concern, as Don pointed out, is staffing. Their federal staffing has really been affected, and so their ability to do their job is also compromised.
And when we say we don't have any, we believe that these programs won't be affected. Who's saying that?
So primarily, a couple things. One is our lobbyists in DC, and also in talking with our colleagues who have projects in these programs. So, you know, we all talk to each other. I've been in communication with LVMWD. They also have Bureau of Reclamation funds, so we're comparing notes, even comparing copies of the letters that we are receiving to see if they're the same or if they're different. And so we're all kind of watching very, very carefully.
Nice.
Whole countries.
Yep, whole country. All right, let's move on, I guess. Item number 7, the 2025 Customer Satisfaction Survey.
Thank you. So I'm going to stand up here even though my significant other says you can hear me 5 miles away. I decided to come up here. So in 2023, the district conducted a customer satisfaction survey to evaluate customer opinions on topics such as billing, outreach, conservation, the pure water facility, and district accessibility. The survey was conducted using the Likert scale method, and the district received about 593 responses. So in order to gauge changes in customer opinion over time, we plan to conduct a new survey this summer. And we're partnering with Harris Advanced, which is our billing software. They're going to provide 2 $100 gift cards as gifts to encourage more participation. It was not known at the time of this report, but we also have Invoice Cloud, who is our bill vendor. They're going to provide a couple of gift cards as well. I just don't know the amount. So hopefully we're going to see a lot more response this time. Attached is, that you have in your packet, is the draft survey for 2025. And again, we will be using the Likert scale, and we are going to use that for consistency in evaluating the responses of the customers. And we want to see the difference of the changes of opinion over time. The last survey was done right around the time the drought was ending. Now we're 2 years past that. We want to see, you know, what's important to customers. So several core questions will remain the same, with focus on district staff being courteous, knowledgeable, and helpful. We will have ease of understanding of billing and budgets, ease of receiving conservation communication from the district, or knowledge of where to find this information, and communication frequency, what they prefer and how often they want to be contacted and how. We also are going to ask them knowledge of the Pure Water Project and the top choice of the area they feel the district needs to focus on moving forward, and then overall customer satisfaction with the district. So we are adding some new questions that will help the district with upcoming projects. So as the district looks for new ways to become more cost efficient, we want to see what the customer preferences, because that is a key
key component in customers utilizing new programs that we may develop. For example, knowing how a customer prefers to view and pay their bill will be an important driving force in district decisions and implementations regarding billing and payment practices. This survey will also offer insights into how customers want to receive information on our new advanced water purification facility. Having customers secure pure water as well as understand the purpose is important for the project's success. So that kind of goes along with what Director Paula was talking about earlier. One of our questions is going to be, how would you like to receive information about pure water? Because we want to reach the customers that may not necessarily go to public outreach events. We had a lot of those, and you get a lot of the same customers, and so we want to reach new and different areas of customers. So in addition to the district's phenomenally successful events, such as Pure Beer and Pure Gelato, the survey will help us develop new public outreach collateral to reach a larger customer base. New areas the district is highlighting in the survey include features customers would like on their water bills, such as wraps, colors, or fonts. We will be redesigning our water bills, and we would like the customer input on that as well. How customers prefer to pay their water bill, and whether customers would like the district to offer different forms of information on the advanced pure water facility. This will include videos, pamphlets, or district informational classes or packets. The survey also added one question about overall customer satisfaction with their drinking water, and that way we want to see how they feel about the water that's being delivered to them. The first customer survey did provide valuable insight into customer thoughts and preferences, and it helped us to develop some key areas and some key communication. So in 2025, we're looking to see growth from 23 to 25, as well as delve deeper into new areas to structure customer service, conservation, and public outreach programs for maximum customer satisfaction and participation. Thank you.
Great. Any questions or comments for Ursula?
I'd like to see what else the other companies can offer us, some gift cards. But I thought it was much better to offer $50 cards. I think 100 is a lot. And I'd rather see us offer 10 50s if we can get enough from the others. Because that is more exciting than just 2.
It is, since it's they're paying for it, we don't have the option.
You want the option to say like 4 50s?
No, that's what they've offered, that they structured to give us. So I could request it, but they might deny it. So they're doing it basically because they want to see what the survey says as well. So
You should put all the names in the basket and then one of those.
I think that's a great idea.
Use AI to try.
There you go.
So, a couple of questions. One is, something I'm really interested in, I always talk to people about, and I didn't see it on the survey, maybe because I didn't read it all, but we ask them when they're in the house, how they get their, like, do they go to their, do they go to their kitchen? They drink out of a plastic, so they go to Costco and buy plastic bottles and put it in their house in plastic. Do they go to their sink with a filter or sink without a filter? I'm always curious because most people I know have a filter in their kitchen, in the refrigerator or under their sink, and they don't really trust the water because they have a filter. I drink out of my house in case anyone cares from the sink without a filter. That explains a few things. That's one survey I'd like to know. And then the second question is, how do we start this process? Like, so I know you're asking what's the best way to communicate? Is it email, is it text? Where's the first, if I'm a ratepayer, where's the first time I see this survey? How do I see it?
So we do have emails. We also will promote it on social media. We can do print ads if we want to. That's something that our communication department will look at and feel is the best route to take to promote it. I created half of the results, but I'm not the one that submitted that.
So we're gonna promote it through a variety of different means, through email, through social media, through bill messaging. So it'll be distributed in a variety of different means, and we're working with that. Keep looking at Ricky, because we're working with Ricky on that part.
So we know it's only one person who's one ratepayer per response. You can't like answer on social media and answer on email and answer.
Well, you could probably directly, but if you want to enter the contest, you have to like give us your information.
So someone could answer 20 times, one person could put 20
false statement?
Foster
If
South.
they wanted to take the time, I guess they could do that, but.
I won't do it.
Yeah.
And then public events we go to, the pumpkin patch, all these events that we go to, is it possible to have someone can stand there if they wanted to and fill it out and just hand it back to you? If they don't want it, some people don't like electronics, or they don't, they're good at it.
This survey will only be open for a limited amount of time, but I'm sure that that is something we could look at developing, like a long-term survey that has certain questions that maybe we want to just give people the opportunity to fill out in person, but great idea.
We get a free promo if they fill it out on the spot.
But I like the idea of adding a question, do you use plastic water back in your home? Maybe another question, do you trust less version's water from your tap?
Yeah, without a filter, with or without, drink with or without a filter.
Okay. And we can definitely bring those and I'll reach out and see what we can do about the gift cards.
I think there's some these types of things are always fascinating to everybody. There's so many people have.
And I've been drinking water for 35 years from the tap also to make iced tea, so what does that say that we all drink water and drink water?
That's structural geniuses that way.
John, correct, you're me. I have no.
All right, there's another question. Do you ever read our water, what's it called, that gives us all the quality?
Consumer
Yeah, you ever read our quality report? Especially now that we don't send it out. We only send out a QR code.
All right, moving on to number 8, water supply and reliability diversification. Could not be more critical.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, President Cordeski. I'm not going to stand up because I just don't get it. Unless I figure you guys get here. So I'm going to give just a really brief update, and then really Dave's it's going to roll into Dave, who's going to talk about some other topics that relate to this. But let me go ahead and just get started here. So I want to give an update on the study that we've been talking on. The board actually authorized an agreement, if you recall, with Kenny James last year. It was, I want to say it was around the fall of last year. And that was with Kenny James. It's about a $500,000 study that was authorized. So I have it my way, we'll get through without having to spend all of that budget, but so far things are going pretty good. Kenny James started the study off in January, so that's around the time we have to get all the insurance and stuff and issue those to proceed. So they went ahead and started doing the scope that's in the agreement, working on that. There was the very initial thing that we did though was we formed a stakeholder group. And what you see here is a list of stakeholders that are really part of this study. There's 3 workshops that are part of this study. We did the first one in March, and we just got done with the second one. There's 3 workshops total. We did the second one on May 27th. So the stakeholders on the left-hand side, you see internal stakeholders. These are primarily city staff, board of directors, Andy Cordes, Jay Lewitt. They're on the stakeholder list. Internal, 13 total. If you don't count the 2 consultants, Karen Miller and Meredith Clement, there's 11. So what I try to do is have a good mix of internal folks, so multi-departmental, finance, Don Patterson. We have folks from engineering and operations. Craig Jones with conservation. So we have a good diverse group of internal folks, consultants. And on the right-hand side are external folks from all different walks of life. We have, you see like Steve McCaffrey, the GM for Cayugas, Lynn Pritchard, Cayugas, Bill Johnson with LA County Waterworks District 29. We have some city council folks, Brad Halpern with Westlake Village, Jeremy Wolf with, he's an interesting one because he's both staff and he's also mayor pro tem. So the idea here was to get a good mix of people that kind of be a voice for our entire service area, all of our customers. And with the technical expertise, and even folks like Karen Lieberman with Westlake Lake Management Association that doesn't have as much experience in water, so a lot of diversity here. And so this kind of reminds me of like the stakeholder group that we had before my time for the Pure Water Project. We were looking at what we do with the destruction line creek. So go ahead and do the next. We're having to use a PDF here. So again, the purpose of the study is really, it came out of this last drought we had, 3-year drought, 2022, got cut back 74% by Metropolitan, our only source of water supply. And it was not a fun situation to be in, and we vowed never to get ourselves into that boat again. And so here we are, we really want to diversify our water supply portfolio. You see on the right there, there's the 2 pie charts. These are kind of hypothetical examples of what could come out of the study. So you have one case here where you have perhaps a water supply portfolio in the year 2040. So we are kind of looking, we're more interested in long term, but there are potentially some near term supply portfolios that will come out of the study as well. But here's 2040, and the blue is right now the whole pie of blue because we're 100% dependent on Metropolitan, but we don't want that. So here you have in a normal year perhaps when the hydrologic conditions are on average, we're not in a drought situation. Well, what we'd like to see is a lot less blue. Again, we're trying to diversify. The blue is Metropolitan in this case. Again, this is just an example of what we could come up with potentially. Orange would be pure water, and the gray would be So again, hypothetically, we haven't come to this conclusion yet, but I wanted to give you an example of kind of what it could potentially look like, and there's a lot of other variations. So on the right, perhaps we're in a drought condition now, and perhaps during the normal year, we've been putting water into a groundwater bank. And we'll talk about this in a minute, either a distant groundwater bank or something local, like in the Oxnard Plain. And during drought, we're pulling water out of the ground instead of putting water into the ground, and we're using that to make up for perhaps another allocation from Metropolitan. So you see the yellow there is making up for what we would consider a hypothetical reduction in water that's available for the Metropolitan. So the study is really looking at what other types of water sources, where would those come from, what would be the optimal mix. Like there is some kind of optimal mix, and there's ideally you want something that is going to have less impact to our customers' water bills. So you want it to be feasible, affordable. We always put that in the back of our heads, and you want it to be readily available. You don't want to be in a situation where maybe we get groundwater banking, but then we come up to a drought, and for some reason we can't pull the water out. That would not be good. So. This is the purpose of the study, is to try to figure out what is the optimal mix of water supply portfolio. These are longer term, 2040, but we are interested in near term as well. So there could be different pies associated with, say, year 2030. Next slide. So the status, as I mentioned, we just finished the second workshop. That's the red area you see there. We go back to the first workshop was really kind of a kickoff for the stakeholder group. The stakeholder group, we shared with them kind of the purpose of the study and all different kinds of water supplies, and just gave them some initial information on the project really. And then the second workshop, as I mentioned, Bay 27, not too long ago, was really, we wanted to shortlist the types of water supplies that made sense to further study, okay? So we're not ruling anything out necessarily, we're not deciding, but we want Kennedy James, the consultant, to really start evaluating these other water supply sources. But we have to be reasonable too, they can't evaluate everything, because some things just don't make a lot of sense to evaluate. And I'll mention some of those in a minute here. And the other thing that in the second workshop is we did some nice polling, and I'll share some results with you, and had some breakout sessions, and there's a lot of good interactions with the folks. We had a good turnout, a few folks didn't show up, but overall we did have a good turnout. The other thing is the group not only kind of zeroed in, we're trying to get Kenya Jenks pointed in the right direction, and there might be some course correction down the road in October when we have our third workshop, but getting them pointed in the right direction, and also letting Kenya Jenks know what the criteria should be as far as like how we should prioritize projects. So we gave them the guidance on that as well. So there's two charts here, the water supply concepts. There's the ones on the left and the ones on the right. And the difference is the ones on the right are basically things that are already underway, things that we've already decided that we're either going to build them, like Pure Water, okay, Pure Water project, that's well underway. Ocean Well is another one where we haven't decided to pursue Ocean Well completely, right? There's a feasibility study that's being done right now by HDR Consulting, feasibility study for all the onshore improvements. So there's studies already happening. Okay, so all the things on the right are things that are really kind of already happening to one degree or another. The things on the left haven't been really pursued up until now. So on the left, you'll see groundwater banking, what we call distant, and local groundwater banking. The one on the very top, Cayugas, that's their RISC program. So Cayugas is looking at, they did a similar study as what we're doing right here. It's very comprehensive. They've been working on it for probably 10 years now. But they have all different types of things. They look at resale and all kinds of different things. But groundwater is a big one for them. So there is actually an interrelationship between Cayugas' RISC program and what they want to do or potentially pursue with groundwater, and then things that we're looking at, distant groundwater banking or local groundwater banking. Going down the list, you see like Metropolitan, the Sepulveda Pass, that's the phase 2. So we're familiar with Sepulveda Pass phase 1, which is kind of underway right now, right? Metropolitan. Phase 2 hasn't been locked in. That's a little bit further down the road. There's a lot more work to be done with phase 2. But so that would be another one. Building, and by the way, these came out of these one-on-one interviews that Kenya Jenks had with a handful of stakeholders. So like someone came up with, well, why don't we just build a pipeline from Canada to here? So we talked about that, the stakeholders got together and talked about that in this last meeting. That was one that was ruled out. Didn't make the short list. It's just not feasible, and even if it was feasible, that would be something that needs to happen more at a state level, like DWR, or it needs to happen with Metropolitan, but that's not something we as a relatively small district should be taking on pipelines from Canada. And then we kind of thought out of the box a little bit, and not leaving too many stones unturned. So there's this idea in the oil business, they use a lot of water to extract oil. Well, you could take that water, treat it, and turn it into drinking water. So we talked about that as well. That was ruled out as well. Largely because it's a little return on investment for the amount of water you get out of that. Not to mention we don't have a lot of oil rigs in this area. Perhaps if we were over on Ventura Avenue, it might make sense. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So I talked about groundwater banking. And the group really started zeroing in on groundwater banking. I know our general manager, big fan, and it's one of the things that you should be talking to the board about today. But this is distant groundwater banking. There's different agencies basically along the state water project. Most of them are up in the Central Valley, I think around Bakersfield area up in there. I can listen now. AVEC is not there. AVEC is down in Antelope Valley. Semi-Tropic is in Central Valley. Irvine Ranch Water District is Actually, in Central Valley, that arrow is not pointed in the right spot. So Irvine Ranch, they have a groundwater bank, even though Irvine is Irvine, they actually bought land and have a groundwater bank that they own and operate up in Central Valley in the Kern County area, which is pretty fascinating. So Irvine Ranch Water District has a bank up there, Kern Delta, Arden, Edison, Mojave. Mojave is down in the Antelope Valley area as well. So there's these groundwater banks that we as a water agency, we could invest in this and basically purchase water and have it put into the ground and then be able to extract it later if we're in a drought, for instance. Next slide. So I mentioned we did polling. We've been doing polling as part of this workshop, and this is polling in the first workshop. This is a poll that was done in the second workshop. And the question was, what are your top choices for water supply? That, again, we're trying to get the consultant pointed in the right direction. Here's the ones that we want you to further evaluate, feasibility, et cetera, cost benefits. So folks, basically, we're big on the local groundwater banking. If we're interested, you can see the red there, second one down on the distant groundwater banking. I think local more because as you get further away from us, there's more that could go wrong. So you could lose a piece of the aqueduct to an earthquake. And so having that supply closer by, I think that provides a lot more assurance that they actually get the water they need. Now, I talked about Cayugas in the RISC program. So a lot of what Cayugas is looking at is groundwater banking in Santa Rosa Valley, in Oxnard Plain, Fox Canyon. These are all things down in the Oxnard Plain area. The issue here is those are basically under adjudication, or they're going through a process to be adjudicated. And so there's kind of a legal hang up right now. But speaking with Cayugas and Ian Pritchard, the AGM over there, he thinks that they'll kind of get through that and figure things out sometime in the next, he says a year. I think that's really a little optimistic. It might be several years. So, but when we look at those first three, the Cayugas RISC, the distant groundwater bank, and the local groundwater bank, basically what this is showing is the stakeholder group really is interested and they want Canyon Jinx to really look at groundwater banking. Whether that's through Cayugas, so us partnering with them on groundwater banking with Cayugas eventually, or maybe it's doing something distant in the meantime, because it could take several years before that gets sorted out with Cayugas and the local groundwater banking program. The other thing with the group, you can see the green bar, 3 up in the top. That's the phase 2 Sepulveda Pass that you're familiar with. What I got from the group was, that's not really a new source of water. It bolsters the supply that we could get from that. So it's kind of like, I think what I got from the group was, we should pursue phase 2 and press net for phase 2. There's a lot of value in doing that, but not at the expense of passing up the groundwater banking. Yes.
So just interrupt, I've been working really hard on phase 2, and the stakeholder group is great, but most of them, except for our internal people, don't really know a lot about the big picture. Phase 2 is for 6 million people. It's not just Las Virgenes, it's Cayugas and then the whole west of the Sacramento Valley, LVMWD. And the whole thing about that one, which is different than all the others, is it's not from the state water. So, as our president likes to say, if the winds blow the other way and the state water has a drought, which it will again, and it may be longer than the last one. The last one almost took us out. But all of these things, the state water banking is great, but it's all state water. And if there's no state water, so the whole concept is you guys always say redundancy and diversification. That comes from Colorado River water, and it's from Diamond Valley Lake. So the whole point of that water is to get a diversified source in case state water runs dry, or there's an earthquake, or there's flooding, or there's subsidence, or pick any one of the things. So, and we're not alone in that. Banking is just us alone. So that's why I'm not sure the stakeholders are the ones who have the expertise on this?
So, yeah, so it's a good point. We've explained to the stakeholders that the ocean well, the desal, that's being evaluated. It's already on the list. So, okay, so when we look at trying to develop the optimal water supply portfolio, we're looking at desal is going to be part of that evaluation.
And I'm not talking about desal, I'm talking about these stakeholders are going to Kenny Jenks, and Kenny Jenks is, oh, they like storage. So let's put all of our eggs in storage, aside from desal, which may or may not happen, maybe years away. That still is not, hopefully we have time today, we don't spend too much time on this when we get to that. But I think, I don't know why we're listening to stakeholders make these decisions when we already been working the full throttle.
Yeah, I would say they're not making decisions for us. They're providing feedback, and it's a collaborative process.
If you look at that list, for them to go to Kenny Jenks, give Kenny Jenks $500,000 to steer, then tell Kenny Jenks what to do, may not be in the best interest of this water district.
I'll share, it's a little bit unique what we're doing and getting stakeholder input from effectively non-water people, so to speak, to help us make critical decisions on the future. And I think, the way I think about it, I think it's important that we take their input into consideration because it has real consequences in terms of cost and cost of water and reliability. But I agree with you that we also need to put it in the context of our water knowledge, right? And we did at those workshops, I feel like Kennedy Jenks and those of us who were there, we did our best to put things in context, but it's impossible in the amount of time that we have to be stakeholders to make them water experts. So they're telling us what they think based on pretty limited information. My thought is, if you look at, like, for example, San Diego right now, San Diego went through something much like we did in the late 80s and the early 90s, and they invested a tremendous amount in local water supply. And now they got to a point where they actually have excess supply. And so the thought is, can we engage our community and community leaders to help us in making that decision so that we find, we can kind of have an informed process to make the right mix. I think it's not the only criteria that we should use. It's one factor of many that I think we should use in making these decisions.
I was going to add too, I mean, one thing to consider depends on how you see this in context. Like, I could almost argue that this phase 2, it's not necessarily a new supply, we were aware of it. Phase 1 wasn't included in here, so I think it's not that it's not important, but when they were considering this as new water supply concept, it probably wasn't scored as high. But nonetheless, we are looking at that, obviously, as mentioned.
And I think what I recall is actually it was Calabasas, one of the council members, felt very strongly that we should pursue that vigorously, but not back off on the other priorities, the other investments. So that was the context that I kind of took away. So if that maybe changes the way you look at it. So I think the point there was, don't think of that instead of ocean well and pure water. Instead, look at them together.
Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and then we talked about how do we prioritize things? What should the ranking be like? And so you can see the blue bar there. A lot of the folks felt like, well, it needs to be, more weight, more score if it's a water supply that's available during a drought. You can see the pink bar there, the second one down, cost is important. So if you have a water supply that's $5,000 an acre foot, and maybe it's super reliable, I'm thinking like desal or something like that, is it going to be, is it really going to be feasible? So the consultant's going to work these into a model and figure out what that optimal portfolio looks like based on different criteria. Obviously, like the blue bar and you see the green bar towards the bottom, supply for emergencies, those are really interrelated. You can see that, we are not drought emergencies, so we do want a water supply that's available when we have a water shortage. So So anyways, the consultant again is taking a look at this information and kind of seeing where our customers' heads are at, what they're thinking to help inform us. Okay, next slide. So the next step is between now and roughly October, is you can see the task 3 there, evaluate projects. So at this point, Kennedy Jenks is looking at the short list of projects, which now includes groundwater banking. So that'll really, it's going to include the ocean desal through ocean well. And that's we'll have more cost information on that. Water supply in about the next month or 2. So we're going to feed that to the consultant to help develop these water supply portfolios. But they're going to evaluate that along with the groundwater banking, so both distant and local, which also relates to Cayuga's risk program. And we're going to look at that along with pure water. I think one of our, pure water is going to happen, so that'll be part of our water supply portfolio. So in October, we'll have workshop number 3, which at that point we'll kind of have a draft, some different options of water supply portfolios for this group to point to and say, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense. So my hope is that by having a stakeholder group of diverse people, that when this board needs to start making decisions on big investments, that we have a whole community backing us. And it's not just, not just us on our side over here. So we have people from outside that have been brought in and give them an opportunity to weigh in. And I think that's just going to make it easier to enter some decisions. So the next slide. And then, so with this, Dave's going to take over and talk about some of these additional items. So Dave, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Joe. So I felt like it was important that we have plenty of time, and like we have the time to talk through a number of topics that we've not had the chance in like sort of an open forum to talk about some of the efforts that we are working on and how they all fit together. And this morning we were down at the county talking about LA County Water Plan, and the topic we heard from the Secretary of Natural Resources is diversifying our water supply. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. I feel like we have a really great strategy with multiple efforts underway to accomplish that. One of the biggest challenges, though, that I see is timing. So we just experienced a severe drought. In 2022, we saw impacts that we don't want to repeat. And we have solutions, but the solutions require time. And the time frame we're talking about, the earliest, and I'll talk through some of these, is about 2028, 2030. And so we have a gap period between now and then, where if we do experience a drought, then we are in effectively similar position to where we were in 2022. So the question is, what can we do to cover us in this sort of gap period? And then also, what you can see as a relative mix of these investments going forward. So one strategy, and Joe described, is in water banking arrangements. And I'll share, when I came to Las Virgenes, and this was going back to 2013, I found one of my, when I first came here, I think I had not even started yet. I wrote out some goals and objectives. One of them was to find a water storage and banking partnership for Las Virgenes. And the reason was because we lack dry year water. And Las Virgenes Reservoir, although helpful, is not dry year water for us. It's really an operational water for an emergency, and there's a big difference. The key difference being that if we were to lean on Las Virgenes Reservoir, and we did this, to use it during a dry year, we basically compromise our ability to respond to emergency. And you might say, well, what's the likelihood of an earthquake happening during a drought? It's possible, it could happen. And so, so we don't want to deplete Las Virgenes Reservoir during a time of drought. So one technique that we could employ is water banking and through a partnership with another agency. And in I've been sort of giving signals and prepping for this at board meetings and talking about the fact that we are in a very unique water year because we have more water in Southern California than is needed, which has not happened a whole lot, and it happens occasionally, and it creates opportunity to store water. And it's a very basic and obvious principle that when you have excess water, you should store it and use it for times when water is short. The real challenge is having storage assets. If you look at our reservoirs in the state, nearly all of them are full or near full. And so really the place to store water is in a groundwater basin. Joe mentioned earlier that there's a whole variety of things that need to be in place for that to be safe and secure. And essentially you need a partner who has the ability to store that water. You need to have a degree of trust in that partner, and they need to have an available source of water to put in the bank on your behalf. Irvine Ranch is one of those potential partners. If we can advance the slide. And what I'm going to walk you through is a proposal that Irvine Ranch has for us for a water banking partnership. And we've been talking with them I've talked with them about this for probably 8 years. So this is not entirely new, but we really had not until this year been able to really put something together where this could actually work. And there's a variety of things that have happened this year. The fact that we have wet conditions, also some of the policy changes at Metropolitan that allow for water to be moved through the metropolitan system to benefit us. So a little bit about Irvine Ranch is a large wastewater agency in Orange County. It's actually the largest in Orange County at the retail level. They have, over the last about 15 years, for their own reasons, invested in groundwater storage in what's called the Kern Fan area. So basically the Kern River and River Delta in this southern San Joaquin Valley. They have a variety of partnerships, and move ahead one slide, that allow them to do that. Their reliability mission here is really similar to ours, to diversify their water supply. They're fortunate to have groundwater, they have recycled water, they have imported water, and then they also capture some local runoff. And then they have this entire water banking program, which is both their emergency supply and their drought water. Next slide. So essentially the way a water bank works is you have a water conveyance system. When there's excess water on that conveyance system, the water is moved into these recharge basins. That water percolates into the ground, into the aquifer. There's a small amount of that water that is left behind for the health of the aquifer, and that's sort of like the local benefit that you provide by doing this. And then during a time of need, you pump that water out through those pipes that look like faucets back into that conveyance system, and you move it through the state's conveyance system, either the State Water Project or the Central Valley Project, and you convey it to the place of need, in this case, down to the Irvine Ranch Water District. Now, it can be done directly, like it's shown here, or it can be done in lieu, where effectively you leave the water in the bank, but you take other water that was already coming down the aqueduct, and you take delivery of it. One thing that's critically important is that you have the ability to actually pump out the real water. Because in a really dry year, like in 2022, there was no water in the aqueduct. So the water banking programs that worked only by exchange were not effective. The other critical thing is that you don't have contamination in the groundwater. Because the contaminated groundwater creates a whole other set of problems. Next slide. Okay, so here's a map that shows the location of their banking project. And they actually have two. It's called Stockdale Ranch and Strand Ranch. And Irvine Ranch actually owns the property in deed. And what you see there is the blue line that's kind of coming diagonally to the left is the Kern River. You see the California Aqueduct, so it's the teal. On the left-hand side, you see the Bryant Kern Canal. To the upper right, that's a federal project. And and then they're connected by a canal called the Cross Valley Canal. So this is like a really critical place in California water conveyance, because you have an interconnection between these two major projects all around these properties. That is why they bought the property there, and that's why they are operating the water bank there. Next slide.
Just quick question.
Yeah.
I mean, these two canals connect. One is ag water, one is potable water, what is?
Yeah, so they're both raw water. So neither, but the Central Valley Project is primarily water for agriculture. And then the State Water Project is a combination, but largely a lot for urban Southern California. And yes, they do connect, and there's a way to move water from one to the other and to facilitate exchanges. And so I always think of our water systems like the freeway network, and you've got like two major north-south freeways, and you've got an east-west, like a 10 freeway to connect them. That 10 freeway is really critical, because without that, you can't operate the two projects together. So here's another photo of Stockdale. West is the kind of magenta area. And you can see there's 3 groundwater extraction wells that are there. Those are the dots. And then the teal area to the right is part north and part south of Stockdale. That's actually the name of the road there, Stockdale Highway. And it is 2 parts, and they have a total of 7 extraction wells on that property. Next slide. So here's a close-up again. So in terms of storage capacity, they have a total of 126,000 acre-feet of storage capacity, a little over 750 acres of land, 16 recovery wells. The conveyance is primarily through the California Aqueduct as part of the State Water Project and what is called the Cross Valley Canal. And they are in the process of actually expanding that banking possibility. Next slide. So here are the key partnerships. And the partnerships are really critical in order to have an effective banking relationship. There's a lot of agencies involved in order to move the water from the place of its origin and eventually to us. And so in this case, Rosedale Rio Bravo is like a contract operator for Irvine Ranch. Irvine Ranch, like us, their primary focus is Irvine. That's where their employees work. They don't send their employees up to the Central Valley to work. So they contract with Rosedale Rio Bravo to run and operate their system, and they pay them to do that. Metropolitan is a really important and critical partner to make this happen, because the water cannot get to Southern California without Metropolitan. And so that water, Irvine Ranch already has what is called a coordinated operating agreement with Metropolitan, meaning that if they store water, and if they were to store water on our behalf, they can, with the support and approval of Metropolitan, they can actually move that water to us in a time of need. And then it also allows IRWD to secure water, both state project water and even Kern River water, when it's available, in that water bank. And then they do what are called unbalanced exchanges with a bunch of different partners, which basically means that if one of these partners has water rights, and a lot of them do, and during a really wet year when there's tons of water, that these partners may not have a place to park all that water, and so they will enter into an agreement with Irvine Ranch where they will park the water in their bank, and they will put 2 gallons of water in the bank, and they will get 1 back, and they will give 1 to Irvine Ranch. And basically that's the cost of parking the water there. So this is what they did, their Kern Fan groundwater storage project. It's underway. It's larger, an additional 100,000 acre-feet of storage. Next slide. And here's the status of it. This project actually involves some state and federal funding as well under Proposition 1. That included, you may recall, included water storage funding that has very slowly get out. Next slide. Okay, let's go to the next presentation. So what I want to go through quickly is what the proposal that Irvine Ranch has made to us, and why this could be worth us considering seriously. And I'll share too with you, I'm telling you this for the first time, so we're not expected to make a decision on this, but they've made this proposal to us, and if there is interest, we can explore a series of steps, which might include going and visiting the water bank if you felt like that would be helpful, and seeing. You can see for yourself, where is this? You can see the infrastructure, you can actually see how the water moves, and even meet the people that operate the water bank. So we have been discussing this for a number of years. Irvine Ranch does have access to water from Metropolitan. In fact, Metropolitan has been in the market selling water this year, and some of the water that we could potentially purchase is the result of that sale. And then there's a concept of extraordinary supply, which is really, really important in any water banking relationship. So the way Metropolitan works during a time of water shortage is they implement what they call their water shortage allocation plan. And basically they tell each member agency, including us, how much water we get. And it is in part based on how much we need. It's sort of a fairness type thing. That water includes and recognizes how much local water we have to produce. And so effectively, if you don't have much local water, as in the case of us, you will get more water allocated from Metropolitan because they have a greater need. If you had a water banking relationship or water storage bank, if it does not qualify as extraordinary, it's part of that allocated supply. And so it doesn't really help. So in order for it to be above and beyond what Met allocates to you, it must have the title of extraordinary. It must. It's like the golden ticket of drought water. It has to be extraordinary. What that means is the water, it cannot be water purchased from Metropolitan. It has to be out of the family, so to speak. And the rationale is that you're bringing in a resource that was not otherwise available to the Metropolitan family. So I'll come back to that. It's critically important that this water would qualify as being extraordinary. I'll tell you why. And then there is a cost to move that water into the Met service area. Next slide. So background, we've been in discussions most seriously. They brought this up in 2022 during the drought. But it really wasn't possible during the drought because there was not water available. They did put together a proposal for us to buy some dry water, but as I recall, it was fairly expensive. It always makes sense to plan ahead before the drought. You can find water to buy during a drought, but it is extremely expensive. And we're talking like up to $10,000 an acre foot. So access to water, the way this would work is there would be a water storage and exchange program proposal. That we would buy water that's available on the market. We would store it in the IRWD water bank with their help through what is called a 2-for-1 basis, which means, like I explained before, we would buy 2 gallons of water. They would save 1 gallon for us, and then they would have 1 gallon. So think of the 1 gallon as the storage fee, and it's the benefit that they get out of the deal for the millions of dollars that they've invested in the infrastructure. And then it would qualify as extraordinary supply. The reason for that is Metropolitan has sold water to a number of partners in the San Joaquin Valley. One of them is called the Dudley Ridge Water District. So the water was sold from Metropolitan to Dudley Ridge. So the water has now been sold outside of the Metropolitan family. IRWD is a member agency of Dudley Ridge because they own land there. And IRWD will buy the water from Dudley Ridge. So you can kind of see how this is like, it goes in Metropolitan, Dudley Ridge, IRWD, and if we were a partner in Las Virgenes. So that's the reason that it's extraordinary. So Metropolitan sold the water to Dudley Ridge at $400 an acre foot, which is actually a pretty fair price for water. That number 400 is the supply cost for water. So water, when we buy water from Metropolitan, we're thinking like $1,400 or $1,500. That's the full cost. It includes supply, transportation, energy. It's the fully loaded cost delivered to our door. This is just the supply cost for water. So that's partly why that number looks low. But it's a fairly attractive price. The water that was sold to Dudley Ridge is allocated to all of their landowners in Dudley Ridge, and so they're each allowed to buy a certain amount. Irvine Ranch put in a request to buy as much as they could, and they were initially allocated a small amount. They were able to procure 5,000 acre feet. So IRWD's allocation of net water increased to 5,000 acre feet. Next slide. Basically what it means is that the transaction between Metropolitan and Dudley Ridge was $400 an acre foot. Dudley Ridge is in turn selling it to IRWD also for 400 acre feet. $400, they didn't mark up the price. And IRWD also does not propose, if you're interested, to mark up the price further. So this is kind of a schematic of how this would work. And it's a little bit complicated, but you've got Metropolitan selling 5,000 acre feet, State Water Project, Table Lake Water, $400 an acre foot to Dudley Ridge Water District. In theory, if we were to enter into an agreement, the IRWD, actually they have already made payment for that. LVMWD, we could reimburse IRWD for some portion of all or some portion of that. That 5,000 acre feet then becomes IRWD supplemental water. They exchange that water, so that water then cannot leave the basin. In that basin, because of that, that puts a constraint on the water, the use of the water. This is really common with water stored in a groundwater basin. It can't be exported out of that basin. They have a way around that. One of the big landowners in this basin is the wonderful company that makes pistachios. They have already agreed to a one-for-one exchange where they can exchange that water, 5,000 acre feet, and that water does not have that restriction. It can be exported from the basin. Then that 5,000 acre feet of new water now, it can be exported. It can, well, first it comes in here to the IRWD water bank. There's a 15% loss. That's what's called the leave behind, which is a very common thing. And then that is then extraordinary supply to IRWD. And if we were interested, 2,125 acre feet would then be extraordinary supply to Las Vegas. We did.
The reason that the supplemental water can't be removed is why? I know you have to deal with the wonderful company and then you can, but why couldn't they directly?
See, because the agreement or the purchase of the water into that basin, one of the stipulations is that it needs to stay in the basin.
Stipulation by who?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would have to double check on that. And as we look through this, there's probably a variety of questions that come up, and I'll add that to my list, and I have a few. But my understanding is part of that purchase and sale agreement with Dudley Ridge is to improve the health of the basin. And so for that reason, the water is intended to stay in the basin.
In essence, it's not.
But in essence, it's not. It's being exchanged so that it can be.
That would create, in my mind, like a risk that something blows up with a wonderful company or a regulator or whatever, like it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. You know, it does sound a little bit that way, but this is actually very common what's being done. The reason these water banks actually work well is because they do provide a local benefit to that area. And the reason they do is basically by storing the water in the basin, you're actually improving the health of the groundwater basin. So, except for during a dry year when you take that water out, all the other years, you've brought the groundwater levels up. And what that means is all the farmers out there who are pumping groundwater, they actually have to lift that groundwater much less than they otherwise would. So these groundwater banks, they work because of the partnership with the local landowners.
I think they're desperate to get the groundwater levels up too, because it drops so much with the water. So, if we don't reverse that, it's permanent too, that's settlement, it needs to pass.
Right, so
they really want to, they really want to start getting more water in these groundwater basins.
I think we've got maybe 2 more slides. Okay, so metropolitan related items. There is a letter agreement with Metropolitan that would be needed. We don't think that that's a major impediment. In fact, I think that that letter could be approved by the staff. It doesn't require board action. And then, obviously, LVMWD is will pass on that extraordinary categorization of the water to us so that we could receive the water. So if you look at cost here, they're showing cost of met deliveries. Okay, so in order to move the water through the metropolitan system, this is the cost to essentially wheel the water through the met system, $1,100 per acre foot. Next slide. Okay, so I really like this slide because it kind of shows the whole cost profile. And what it shows is cost per acre foot. So the cost of this water, this is not cheap water compared to normal supply, but you have to keep in mind this is water when there is no water. So at a time like in 2022, when we were short water, the spot market for water, so to buy water at that time was very high. It was in the order of, there really wasn't water available, but if you would pay for it, you know, it's on the order of $10,000 an acre foot. So what we're talking about is all in the cost, but if you include everything, it's about $2,300 an acre foot. Normal cost for metropolitan treated tier 1 rate is about $1,400. So that gives you an idea. This is more expensive than normal cost water, but you would expect that. For LVMWD, you can see that they actually achieve a benefit and they actually get water available at a bit lower cost. And the reason they do that is they're basically monetizing their asset in investing in this water bank. So they're achieving that benefit because of the 2-for-1 arrangement. So that 1 gallon of water that we leave behind for them, they are able to take advantage of that and during a drought, pump that water out at a lower cost.
Is that cost after the 15% and
yes,
the 1-2%?
Yes. Yes. So if you compare it, the other thing to compare to is Metropolitan, when they are in allocation, they have something called a penalty rate. We usually try really hard to avoid that, but Metropolitan never actually cuts you off for water, even though it feels that way. You can use more water, but they charge you a very high rate for it. They call it a penalty rate. The penalty rate is $43.55. So what we would be doing is, you can look at this is an avoided cost. So let's say you were to say, just disregard the penalty rate. Let's just use all the water that is needed and that our customers want and need during a drought and pay the penalty rate. This is what the total cost would be up here. And you'd be paying $43.55. By taking advantage of a banking relationship, you'd be paying about $2,300, saving about $4.5 million. So it's quite a big savings by planning ahead.
Actually, I was looking at this a little bit last night, and one thing, a couple things. One is, if they need the water, right, they have priority over us, is what I saw. So we're limited amount that we could get each year seemed pretty minor.
Yes, good point. So with regard to priority, the priority is for extraction. So the water, we will own the water. The water that's in the bank, we own it, it's an asset of the district. And they will never take that water. So they don't have priority over that, but the extraction capability of the wells to pump that water out, they do have a priority system that they've implemented. And so we would be second priority to IRWD and their existing banking partners. The good news is that they really don't have a lot of banking partners right now, so we're primarily second priority to Metropolitan, to IRWD itself. And you can't really expect to have priority above the owner of the bank. You know, their ratepayers made that investment for those facilities, and so they are always going to make sure that their priority is first. The other thing, if you looked, what you'll see is they are proposing, if they have excess capacity, they will deliver more than what they would normally provide. The way the banking works is in any 1 year, when you store water, you basically plan to remove it in 3 years. So you don't remove it all in a single year. And that's the way almost every water bank is. So if you put in 10,000 acre feet, you would remove 3,333 acre feet each year for 3 years. And the concept is it's a multi-dry year period, and also none of these water banks have enough extraction capacity that you can take all of it in 1 year. You know, it's like your bank account. You know, you withdrew the full balance immediately. It has an impact on the local groundwater basin and their ability to run their facilities.
But I also see that like they cap it at, and we're in stuff, but like at 700 feet a year. I mean,
So
is that?
That's the way
What does that get?
So that's the way the math kind of works out. If you were to take 5,000 acre feet, you were to remove 15% for the leave behind, divide it in half for IRWD, half for LV, that would be our storage, our total storage volume. I think it was 2,125. Divide that by 3, you'll get 700 and some odd acre feet.
So does that move the needle? I mean, would that move the needle?
So that's a good question. It would absolutely help. It is not enough to, move our region from where we would be in a need to call for conservation. But during 2022, a couple hundred acre feet would actually have made a substantial difference. So I really think it could be the difference between our area being impacted at sort of the severe to very severe to extreme level. And you start to think about if you were to couple that with some other concepts, maybe drawing some water from Osbridge's reservoir, maybe a partnership with Cayugas. Now you've got sort of a package where we could be in pretty good shape during a drought while we can finish the work on pure water, ocean well, Sepulveda feeder pumping in stage 2, and then interconnection with District 29.
Stephen, have you negotiated deals like this before for other districts?
This is a complicated one, but yeah, we've done other water exchange programs, water transfers, recycle water contracts.
These kind of banking?
A banking program, I don't know if we've done banking programs, but we've done a lot of groundwater, complicated groundwater transactions with the street banking program. But what would happen with this is that Metropolitan would be the lead dog on all the contracts. They generate, in my experience, they like to generate the contract. I know we know the right next to but yeah, it's complicated.
So Don likes to always say that Metropolitan is telling everybody in Washington and Sacramento that Metropolitan's got 40-year supply, which is unheard of in the water world. If you're anywhere else. So we're talking about the next 4 years essentially until we get pure water online, potentially ocean water. So with Metropolitan, through just simple exchanges, be able to cover us in a drought over the next 4 years based on what the storage is now?
I would say, they told us that before 2022.
Is it 4 years, 4 years supply in 2022?
They told us our needs were covered. And, I just feel like, nobody predicted 2022, including Metropolitan, and I don't blame them, but what we're experiencing is conditions that none of the modeling predicted. And we've had real impacts, and I just feel like this could be a strategy to help hedge against that. But I agree, Metropolitan is in a much better position because of the storage. Although where we are on the west side, a lot of that storage is not helping us right now. The storage in Lake Mead it can't get to us. The storage in Diamond Valley Lake also cannot get to us. So we're really talking about storage in Castaic and in San Luis Reservoir.
That's why that's Peter is so important.
Yes, yeah. And I do want to give an update. I don't want to use all of our time to talk about this, but because I want to give an update on both the feeder and the other projects as well. But I do think this is an opportunity that is worth us looking at. And I wanted to gauge, I didn't expect that at this meeting you would say, let's do this. But I wanted to gauge if there was a level of interest to explore this further. And I'll share that Irvine Ranch is also a partner that will help us walk through this and help us to feel comfortable with it, whatever that means, including, going to see it and see how the bank operates and that kind of thing. I do think having a partner that you can trust is really critically important, and I believe that Irvine Ranch is such a partner.
My other question is, if there's a drought like we haven't been able to, we couldn't anticipate the previous drought, what if there's another drought like that or worse? Will there definitely be water in this bank? Because Irvine's got the first priority, and then their partners ahead of us have it. And I don't know if we'd have priority over the future partners or not, but could there be a situation where that water's even in an emergency because it was not anticipated how great it was, that we would have no water in this tank?
No, the water itself will be secure and actually be, it'll be held for us. It will not be taken by another party, including Irvine Ranch. It's really the extraction capability that's sort of a portion. So their ability to pump that water out is the part that there's a priority system. In my mind, really, that will come down to timing. So when you need the water, we're going to have to be willing to take it when it's available. But I think we can do that. We are fortunate we have Las Virgenes Reservoir, so we could, in theory, we could lean on Las Virgenes Reservoir for a little bit, and then bring that through our partnership with Irvine Ranch, bring that water in and replenish LV Reservoir.
So the extraction and the timing is, we want it, then maybe to a certain amount. So they go to the other partners, they go to Irvine, and then we're waiting in line to get it.
Right.
While we're waiting in line, we don't have any water.
Right, that's the theory. The good thing is we would be, and I'll check with IRWD, but we would be among their first banking partners. One of the reasons IRWD is really wanting to do this is they want to demonstrate this concept that they've primarily done this bank for their own needs. They want to demonstrate that there's a benefit broader than just their agency, that their bank can provide regional benefit, and this is a way that they can do that.
We probably want money, they have too much water. Of course.
Well, interestingly, they actually want the water. They want the water more than the money. So in this case, what we would be providing them is water. So, one for one.
Two things. Not just drought, there's earthquake, and it is a delta. This water comes in handy because it's off of the delta. And I can tell you that there's other water agencies that have been doing groundwater banking for a long time. My former employer, Alameda County Water District, is one of them, semi-tropical. I think Cayugas, they don't have it now, but they are looking at this.
And so this is a short-term
Well, so actually this proposal is a 20-year proposal. So 20 years, And the way it would work is, the water would be stored for 10 years, and in year 11, it starts to deplete, so it reverts back to their ownership. So 10% of it in year 11, 20% year 12, and so on until by year 20 it's fully reverted to them. The reason for the 10 years, that's roughly the hydrologic cycle. So the idea is every 10 years you're going to likely have a severe drought, and so you can draw on it. The other thing is, because it's an asset that they own, they can't realistically have us park water there forever, because we basically own a portion of their storage. And so that's why there's a term to it. That term is quite long though, having 20 years, but it does start after 10 years, it starts to, deplete.
And we could always in 8 or 7, if we haven't taken any waters, take a third of it.
Yes.
Unless they cap it, right, every year? So you couldn't take a third in 1 year?
Yes, you can take a third. That's a 700 something. You can take a third.
Yeah, so you can take thirds, and then by year 10, you're out, you have your money back, or you have your water.
Yes, there's water. Yeah, and then the other thing, it does include a term to renegotiate if we wanted to. Let's say we got to year 9 or 10 and we had not used it, we could renegotiate it and extend it.
And metropolitan rates are probably much higher in years.
Yeah, so those are,
How is this different than these, where we were going up, they're putting up water in Mojave, they were gonna put their pipes up, that they trade that water. It's kind of different, because we were very much against that program.
So it's different, it's similar in concept, but what is fundamentally different is that they did not have direct pump back. So they didn't have the ability to directly pump water out of the ground and deliver it physically to us. And that's really an important part of a program in the event that you have such dry conditions where there isn't exchange water available. So there's no water coming down the aqueduct to exchange for us. And so that was the concern on that also.
And change thing, and wasn't treated.
Not to my knowledge. Should we keep?
Yeah,
I know you
might as well move on.
Should we get the other topics?
Yeah.
So the other topics, yeah, here we go. We sort of skipped over the update to the Sepulveda feeder pumping project, and I didn't do that on purpose. I want to go back to it. It's critically important. I think we have heard from the board that this is number 1, number 2 priority for Las Virgenes. And we have, together, myself, working with Director Lewitt, we've been worked really, really hard on this at Metropolitan. There's actually a trip that Director Lewitt's hosting with Director Luna from the city of Los Angeles on Wednesday of next week. On the 25th, where we were actually going to stop at the Sepulveda pressure control structure, which is one of the key facilities. This project is, as we've explained before, it's a 2-part project. There's a stage 1 and a stage 2. The stage 1 is a relatively small project, 30 cubic feet per second of pumping capacity. Metropolitan is in the design build phase of work. The contractor is a company called JF Construction, and it involves installing pumps at both the Venice pressure control structure and the Sepulveda pressure control structure. And they work in tandem, so basically it allows them to pump water from the LA basin, which they call the central pool, where sort of all water roads connect, and where all of their supply mixes. And they can pump that water first through Venice, and then through Sepulveda. So it's 30 cubic feet per second. Normal operation though, they normally move 30 cubic feet per second down through the pass, Sepulveda Pass, to keep water quality fresh. So they will no longer need to do that if they operated this. So it has a net benefit to us on the west side of 60 CFS, which is a good help. Will also be another part of the whole puzzle to make us more reliable during a time of drought. But still, you have to keep in mind that can be shared between Los Angeles, DWP, LVMWD, and Cayugas. And so that is a relatively small amount. That project is being built it was originally being built together as one project. We just learned recently that it's been sort of bifurcated, and they're going to build the improvements at Venice first, and then at Sepulveda second. The reason for that is they have some power facilities that are needed at Sepulveda in order to power these pumps. So the pumps require upgrading all of the electrical equipment, and if you're familiar with that location, it's kind of a remote, isolated location. The power provider there is LVMWD, and so they are working with LVMWD to install new power transmission and transformers that will run those pumps. Those two pump station projects are slated to be done in 2028. So that is the latest schedule, late 2028. That's as recent as this week. I got that information. The second part of the project, stage 2, is the big part where a more meaningful amount of water is moved. That's an additional 130 CFS, and that will increase the pumping then from 130 at 130, that's 160, 160 cubic feet per second. And that's a lot.
That's not the east-west transfer.
No, it's not. That is all north through the Sepulveda Pass. The schedule for that project is 2032. And we've been working really hard to keep a focus on that project because every time the project seems to come up, it just seems to be
slip a little further away.
not so much that it slips, but there seems to be new wrinkles that just we need to continue to keep it within the focus of Metropolitan. One of the issues is Metropolitan now has this climate adaptation master plan for water, Camp for Water. It's sort of a process to evaluate all of their investments, and that project will need to be evaluated through that criteria. And that's something that we've been really focusing on to be sure that when it is, that it's evaluated and its positive attributes really rise to the top so that the project is funded and proceeds.
What's physically needed to change those pipes and size and pumps and electric and voices pumps?
So we don't know on the stage 1 is in the order of $100 to $150 million. The stage 2, we don't know the cost yet. It will be several $100 million. It's not insignificant.
And is it basically replacing everything that was done in stage 1 or
Adding to it. It's adding to it, and one of the things we've asked for them to do, and Metropolitan has, is plan in stage 1, plan for a future stage 2. So they are doing that. So it won't be a complete rebuild. They are making a plan so it can be expanded.
John Minarski, who's in charge of, what's his exact title?
John is the executive officer and chief engineer and assistant general manager.
So number 2 guy.
He's the number 2 person.
Number 2 Metropolitan will be coming on a trip on June 25th. So we can ask him these questions about stage 2, and he's the one that we bug every time I see him.
Yes, and the fact that we're having this trip and that we're having, Metropolitan takes these inspection trips really seriously. They know how important this is to us. Jay has told them many times, as have I, and so they really do listen to us. And this visit that we make, they're going to be going over everything about the project, the timing, how it's going to work. So we've really done our best to improve the profile of the project, but I think that we've been successful.
And our consultant will meet us early in the morning at Los Virgenes on the 25th and give us another background on this project. So we get to Sepulveda to know more about it. Jim Green.
Yeah.
And if you remember, there was this video I sent recently. Carson with him that be 34 years, and he had never been in the tunnel that comes from near San Jacinto. And he had led up, I don't know if you saw it or not, but I sent him around. And he's very, very knowledgeable, really nice guy from this one.
And Jay, to your point earlier about phase 1 and 2, to put it in context, phase 1 really only provides a little bit more capacity than our current interconnection with Cayugas. So it's not a lot, and as Dave mentioned, we're sharing that amongst the other state water project areas. So the phase 2 is extremely important.
And we don't use this in emergency situations, it's against gravity. So we're only gonna pump this water, we can't add anything, it's a last resort.
Yeah. It's a pretty big system modification for Metropolitan. Metropolitan is accustomed to a gravity feed system primarily, whereas our water system is pumped throughout. Metropolitan system, with the exception of the Colorado River system, it's flows like gravity. The water comes from Northern California and flows throughout. This is a pretty big and significant change for them.
And this one is Colorado River water?
Yes, it's a combination of Colorado River water and water stored in Diamond Valley Lake, which, yeah, is state water project water right now, but it's water that's already kind of gone past us, and they previously could not come back.
They change our filter and sanction time?
Probably not.
Just to put in context, it's somewhere between, if we had another drought like we have, it could give us another 40% water.
48%. 48% of what? 48, is it 44? 42%. This is phase 2? Okay, phase 1's nothing.
Phase 1's relatively.
Well, that would be our, so that would be like our share, it's water that would just kind of.
And that little water makes it a water.
Yes, I think it's almost like a stage 1 is sort of a demonstration. Stage 2 would be a different project. That's.
Phase 2 would be more close to like probably 20%. But then, the Colorado River is dry. So that's why the stakeholder group is pursue phase 2, but not at the expense of other things like inside.
But having access to the central pool is important because there's new water supply development that could occur as well. I mean, pure water also pushing desalinization effort further south of this cable and internet system that provides conveyance and services to us.
And just 2 more points, I know you want to move on ocean a little bit. Every month, if you're a ratepayer of Las Virgenes, you pay for this water every single month. There you go. So that's something to know, and also, like you said, the pure water, which is what you're paying for every month, $8 billion project, we want to have access to that water, it's only pure, and then Metropolitan Board voted unanimously to help the state water defense agencies, have a tangible way to help us. Including 100%.
With that extra water, and without our homeowners to have more than 2 days instead of 1 week. And I'm serious, I don't know. I'm interested. I thought
I don't think anyone's questioned the numbers.
that's important.
If there was another, Matt will say now that you don't have to worry that we've got plans in place that you won't have another 22 drought with it.
Well, I will tell you slightly off topic, but the fire department was through my HOA last week, and I did not stop hearing from the homeowners, because they told some of the people, you've got to build everything out within 5 feet now. We've heard that won't really take effect until 26, 27, 28. There are some homeowners who either misunderstood or have a lot of vegetation, and the fire department was very serious. They issued summonses, which we've never seen before. The fire department issues summons to the homeowner directly. Yeah. So far, I've got everything covered in terms of Welsh.
You know, Dave, just one more question on the groundwater banking. Something there.
No, there's not a deadline. I do think that I did tell them I agree with you at this meeting, so in fact, they actually offered to call in and speak to you. If that would be helpful, they might be listening, but I think unless you would like that, I think it might be better to have that at a future meeting. They have their general manager, Paul Cook, has been very involved in this, along with, you saw the name Paul Whitehorse. Paul Wakehorse is their executive director of water policy. He knows this inside and out. He would be happy to come to a board meeting at a future date to talk to you about it. He would do a much better job to explain it to you. And then you could also ask questions of him. So there's a whole variety of things that we can do to, further explore.
So it's not in our agenda.
It's not in tomorrow's agenda, no. So I thought that'd be a little quick to.
So when I first saw this, when Dave shared this with me, this water main for my first thought was, well, shouldn't we finish this diversification study first to figure out what is optimal for us? But then if you think about it, we had the second stakeholder workshop. The group clearly is gravitating towards banking as one of our pieces of the pie. And Kenny James is going to study the heck out of it to figure out what the optimal piece is. But in the meantime, we have this opportunity in front of us. We could look at it as a pilot, try it out. If it's only 700 acre feet a year, which is what we're talking about, that's probably, you might discover that we actually need more, and there's going to be other banking opportunities potentially, or we do more turbine at that point. But I think that looking at it this way is, we have an opportunity now, and the stakeholder.
I don't see anything that's as cool as
It's like balance for what the other, what is this whole theater in terms of the how do you get per year and that? Like he puts it in this.
Yeah, so the rough math is take the cubic feet per second and multiply by 2, and that's how many acre feet per day. So if you take, take 130 times 2, that's 260.
The small one is 60.
Yeah, so 60
acre feet per day.
Yeah, 120 acre feet per day.
And will we get 1/3 of that, or will we get?
No, that's
a portion of that. No, we would get a small portion.
Right.
Elliot's like,
So right now, we're using about 14,000 acre feet a year. Okay. If we had access to phase 2, okay, that would equate to about 2,800. 20%.
Significant chunk.
Yeah.
You're sort of building a portfolio, right? Is it okay to move on to Ocean Well?
Sure, yes.
And LA Waterworks 29?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about them together because there's a good relationship. So we've got to hand it out. So Director Lewis asked if we can have a schedule available on the ones that we're doing with Ocean Well. If you take one, pass it down. You did include a schedule. I asked John Zhao if you'd join us. John? Yeah. There you are. And I asked John if he would join us because John has really been key in our effort with Ocean Well. And I do think it's important that we have milestones and we have a plan. This is the milestone schedule as of right now with Ocean Well. I'll say that it's fairly aggressive, which is a word that is synonymous with Ocean Well. That they are very aggressive in their pursuit of bringing this to be commercially viable, and so they are wanting to move it quickly. But also, when you look at this, what you'll see is at the very bottom that the soonest that this could happen would be 23rd. So there are a whole series of steps in order to get there, including those steps that we've already completed. So you look at the top, you have the Ocean Well Series A funding, an initial round of fundraising. That was the fundraising with Kubota. We have the Metropolitan Grant that is helping to defray some of the costs, and our pilot opening that happened on March 25th. And then we actually have a scope of work for the study that they're needing to do in the reservoir. So that is underway and will continue through the end of the year. I actually had a conversation with Robert, it might have been late last week, Robert Bergstrom, and he asked me if we would be open to actually running the pilot in the reservoir longer than they had originally planned. And I actually think that's probably a good idea, as long as it doesn't interfere with our operations. And I anticipated that would probably need to happen anyway. But their schedule shows completing all of the testing according to the grant funding agreement by December of 2025. One thing I would really like to do is schedule a time for us to go out there and for you as a board to go out there and actually see the progress, see the work. Maybe we could even have a special board meeting in the control room there. It's really fascinating to see the computer screens that actually have the cameras that are on the unit itself on the water, and you can actually see the organisms in the lake and how they're affected by the ocean well unit. And you can see them sort of in this annular space, which is passing the outer screen, which is a 1 millimeter screen. And you can see that they are not drawn in, and they're not impinged, right? Impinged on the inner screen, which is really important. And that's one of the key environmental benefits of the system that they call the life-safe system. But what's really great about it is that you can see visually that it actually works. And before it was just really based on their analysis, looking at velocities and all that kind of thing. So you can see that the system works from an environmental perspective the way that they have said. They're also collecting a whole set of data that is showing the efficacy of the treatment process and energy usage, run times, and that kind of thing. They are thinking that the next step is a boat test in the ocean. We're also underway for an alignment study that we've been doing. That is a multi-agency study that HDR is leading. We have, is it still 7 agencies, John?
Yeah.
7 agencies that are jointly funding that work. We meet monthly in the boardroom. I think it's is it the third Thursday of the month? In the afternoon, and have been making good progress. They are planning their Series B funding for next year. That's the next big fundraising effort. As a startup, fundraising is kind of part of their survival and part of them being successful. So they are preparing for that. One element that they have asked us to think about is how would we, what would be the governance type structure that would fit for Ocean Well should it move forward? And we've talked about the idea of a joint powers authority as being sort of the means by which the 7 agencies can come together and jointly join powers together and to contract with Ocean Well should a commercial project develop. And then the JPA members would then each be participants to a certain percentage. So you would have a percentage share. It would not be unlike our JPA with Triumph. We had anticipated that could take quite a bit of time to set up a JPA like that. But what we learned is that the City of Los Angeles, Department of Water and Power, and the City of Burbank, which are both among the 7 agencies, they're partners, they already have a JPA that they set up a number of years ago, and that they would be open to actually using that JPA as a vehicle for this. We included in the agenda packet at the very end a copy of that JPA. And so there's still some work to be done. I'm going to have a call with Paul early to really talk about the JPA and what it's intended for, to be sure that he's comfortable that it's a good fit. And I'll tell you where I'm referring to in the packet, if that's helpful. It's beginning on page 73 in the agenda package. And it's called, they actually called the JPA, it's called the Southern California Public Water Authority.
Saw that, but I didn't know what it was.
So, interestingly, they formed it because they anticipated that they could have a partnership to develop some form of project that they had not identified yet. And they wanted to work together on it, and they wanted to be able to jointly fund it and jointly administer it. And they've not put this JPA to use. So they are actually interested in making this JPA a useful governance structure. So it was back in 2016. The governance of it would have to be modified, so any member of the JPA would have to have some role in helping to administer the JPA, but I think it could be addressed easily through an amendment, and there is actually a procedure in the JPA agreement that talks about how to add members. It was always envisioned that it would include additional members. So I bring that up because I think that could be an important next step in this process is forming together to be part of a JPA. Doing that in itself will not obligate us to anything except to work together with the partners of the JPA. But it could be a critical step forward to show the efficacy of the partnership between the 7 agencies. It would also help Oceanwell tremendously in showing their viability in securing their Series B funding, which is working on next year. Also, I think this alignment study is critically important, a phasing plan to implement it in sort of bite-sized pieces also is really critical. And we've talked with the partners, including Waterworks District 29 and the City of Los Angeles, about an early phase that would involve implementing a project that did not require a large amount of new onshore infrastructure. John, I don't know all that, if there was something that you wanted to add about it.
Yeah, so the 7 agency partnership is very critical to Oceanwell, and for them to develop a local water supply off the coast of Malibu, and it's those water will be, climate change resistant. It's available at all times. So be able to be part of that, and not paying, significant costs as part of R&D, but private equity takes up to that. I think it's just a sweet spot for Oceanwell and for the 7 agencies to move forward. And we like the technology, but as you know, in order to take to fruition, it takes, in the water business, it takes years and a consistent effort like we're doing now to get where we want to go. So, thank you for your support.
And how long does it take to get a JPA? Years?
So normally, I think to create a JPA from scratch, in theory, it could take a long time just because.
Depends on the interest of parties. I mean, I've managed, represented a bunch of them, sort of interests to get together just to politics, but other ones go like a lot of groundwater sustainability agencies, it came together pretty quickly. So I mean, in my experience, it depends on the agency's part.
And what's great about this, the way this JPA agreement is structured, it envisioned that, let's say you have 7 parties, it envisioned that some of the parties might have projects that it envisioned more than one project or program, and it also envisioned that there might be different combinations. So LA and LV might have a partnership within this, or Burbank and others. It didn't have to be all of the parties participating in all of the projects. So by my reading, it was very flexibly written. So again, I think it still needs review by the legal counsel. I think the group needs to look at it, but I really do think, and Burbank and LVMWD brought it to the table as an option, which really says a lot in my mind about their commitment to this partnership. They are really trying to bring to bear what a resource that they have to help move our effort along.
So in meeting with Manat, there's a law firm called Manat Phelps. Can you talk about that?
Yes.
And Dave and I met with them, and the next real step is to decide who the client is, who the JPA is, who's in it, what kind of formation the JPA, but also there's a fee that law firms like to do, retainers like to own, going forward. And then the question is who pays for the retainer and how much they pay. Another one is like, is that a board?
Yeah, there should be a whole stack.
Ready?
I have that.
Thank you.
Actually, check.
Great, thank you.
That's all the stack.
So what's the
Interestingly, they reached out, when did they reach out? It was like a year ago, I feel like, when we were beginning to initiate our partnership. One of the key elements in Ocean Well moving forward is being viable. There's a variety of them, but one of them is a regulatory pathway. They must have a regulatory pathway to permit in California to do this. And right now, that pathway is, it's very, very challenging. The most recent desalination project was at Huntington Beach, and that project did not move forward. Now, that project was more difficult because it was a traditional coastal desal project, but right now the concept of deep ocean desalination is not even mentioned in any of the state ocean plan documents related to seawater desalination. It's not well enough known and vetted that there's even a procedure or pathway for it. And so it would need to go through basically all of the normal regulatory processes for a coastal onshore desalination process, which would make it effectively a decade long, if it even were able to navigate through that process. So it's really important that the state of California, in their update to the California Ocean Plan, which is actually underway right now, recognizes that there is new and innovative technology that has a whole variety of benefits that address the environmental concerns, and they create a pathway for regulatory approval. That's going to take some work. It's not going to happen by just writing letters. And we have written letters. We've written a number of letters. In fact, Ocean Well has, and all of the partners. Lynette Phelps has some specialized influence and knowledge in handling matters like this in Sacramento, and they've put together a proposal to assist with that in a way that they feel confident that they can be a partner to develop this regulatory pathway for deep ocean desalination. They had included a whole variety of different services in here. We had a number of meetings with them, Director Lewin and I, Tim Quinn, Robert Bergstrom, and we have sort of narrowed it down to what we felt was the core and central part of the work. And there's a series of 7 items that are described in here on pages 2 and 3. What they're proposing is a monthly retainer, and that retainer amount is $12,500. And the concept here is that this would be a shared expense between Ocean Well and the partners, the JPA partners. Now, we don't have a JPA yet, and we haven't really established the structure among the partners, but the thought is that there's value in initiating this service, and time is somewhat of the essence because this Ocean Plan Amendment is underway, and that we wanted to gauge the level of interest and support from the board to bring this back with the idea that this will start out as a joint effort between LV and Ocean Well, where we each pay half, 50-50, and that the understanding would be that we would transition this, the half that LV initially participates on, this would be transitioned to become a JPA effort that would be shared by the 7 partners. And so when you look at that, you look at $12,500, it's not inexpensive, it is significant, but when you split that, you're talking about $6,250 initially for a period of months, perhaps that is an LV expense, and then over the longer term, that will then be divided by the 7 partners. And when you look at it in those terms, it's actually a fairly reasonable cost for what is the pivotal element in terms of regulatory approval for ocean.
I think that it's interesting that Las Virgen would split this, let's say there's 7 partners, and we'll probably end up being the smallest because our share size, you look at Los Angeles, we're the biggest by far. And we're putting up half the money with Ocean Well, and Los Angeles we have none. And I understand time is looking at this, because if you don't do this step now, it's going to really set things way back. As Joe says, this could be 30% of our inventory, so we don't want to play around with 30% of inventory, because we need that 30%. This could be so valuable to us. So I think if I'm okay with, I'd like to hear the other board's opinions, but I'm okay with splitting the 12.5 for now. But I think it should be limited in scope, we should have a certain amount of months, whether it be 1, 2, 3 months. And maybe anything after that, we could still put the money up, but then the partners would reimburse us. Because you're talking about 7 partners, $1,000 a partner. So if we go past 3 months, then the other partner will reimburse, or we put in 65, they reimburse us 1,000 each, whatever, so we have to. So it's costing us the same, and we really should be paying less than anyone anyway. Because LA should be paying up, the 6,500 should be paying 5,000. They're gonna get, it just should be based on how much water you take, in my opinion.
Thank you for bringing that up, though. You're thinking of the way metropolitans, it's a separate water. Why would they necessarily have more of a take of, I'm thinking I've thought of something I hadn't thought of before. Where's this water going to go? Is it going to go into the metropolitan system to be distributed out just separately, where we're all equal?
So the thought process is it's a combination of the two. And so we have HDR doing a study that looks at different avenues for the water to flow into the system. It comes in at Malibu. It would feed into what's called the Malibu feeder, which is on PCH, and then it can go easterly all the way to the Palisades and to Marina Del Rey, and then eventually even into the metropolitan system at Venice, the Venice pressure control structure. And then the other avenue is coming up through the canyon, through Malibu Canyon Road, coming all the way up to the district, right by headquarters, and coming eventually to Cayugas, and even into DWP, so coming essentially reversing the normal flow direction of water all the way back into the valley, the West Valley feeder number 1, where it can then go to Cayugas and all the way to DWP in San Fernando Valley.
Okay, one other question, because you started to mention that the qualification to do this actually would take 10 years. So they're expecting to have something operating by 2030, or something like that, or 2035,
So their schedule is assuming that we are successful in accomplishing this. And the 10 years I kind of made up, I don't know, but judging by how long these projects have, you look at the Carlsbad desalination project and the timeline.
Or was it a project of some guys, these approval of ocean well type project by the Coastal Commission and putting it into the government, that would take years.
Yeah, but Gary, that's why you go with the NAP.
Yeah,
They leverage their relationships. They have a relationship with the governor's office and the regulators, and so that would take that 10 years and shrink it to allow this 2030 to happen. But if you don't go this route with the law firm, maybe it is 10 years, maybe it's longer, maybe it doesn't happen. So I think this is a way of getting it sooner.
So essentially they're lobbyists.
Not essentially, they're a law firm that has lobbyists.
I don't know why, I assume, if I'm not involved in this call, I assume that. So I assume that Ocean Well has a relationship with all the 7 partners, right? No.
But we do because we have a monthly meeting, so we are all working together. So yes, I would say we do, in that we.
Not independently though, right? Through the group.
Ocean Well.
Yeah.
Ocean Well has a relationship. They know all the partners.
They know, yes.
Right? So do you feel that we're like the lead partner?
Sure.
We're the lead partner.
Yeah, we're the lead partner, no question about it.
Yeah. So I don't see why you have a monthly meeting with everybody, right?
Yeah.
To me, it should be a topic of the broader, all that.
Well, that's funny.
That they would all sign on.
It's funny you mention that, because there's a meeting this Thursday, the 26th.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
26th is the next meeting, and the governance thing, 2 things that have been bothering me about this project so far is the time milestones, which everybody have, hope we stick to it, and then the governance. And the governance has not been struck, because we were doing the NAP, they thought Ocean Well was the client, and that we're gonna pay for we're gonna have a JPA, the client should be the JPA and Ocean Well. So this issue needs to be brought up front and center. I was planning on coming to that meeting and talking with the 7 partners just about governance.
Again, and I I was envisioning that, Director Levine, that at the next meeting, that we would talk about this, and we would actually, if there was support to do this, if that was the plan, bring this to the group and immediately tell them that we think this has merit and what the plan is. But I'm also being realistic about all of those organizations, they need to go back to their elected bodies. So it's going to take time for them to do that. And so unless we were to wait for all that, it's going to be a few months. And so that is kind of where we were thinking.
Maybe I don't see a few months making a difference one way or another.
Oh, yeah, it'll make a difference, Wayne, you gotta move, it's in development now. How the policies at the state are in development, that's those costs.
Also, don't these 7 agencies have the ability to spend $1,000 a month without going back to the authority?
So all the managers of these agencies, and we generally have the managers there, they have a certain approval authority, but a recurring expense like this is normally something you bring to your governing body.
This is investing money, not buying.
Now, but you might be right, some of them may be able to approve this on their own, or I will add though too, like, think about the city of Los Angeles, Department of Water and Power, and this is a conversation that I've had with them. This is a significant political investment for them, for seawater desalination. So they are actually talking internally, and we are having those discussions about how to socialize this with their board of commissioners and their city council. Because as of right now, they have not done a presentation to city council where they've talked about this, and they will need to do this. So this could be a good reason to do that and show, what they are working on.
Is that Mark who's voting this one?
No, this would be, for CWP, it would be Anselmo Collins, David Hedgeon,
I just wondered at what point, why isn't Ocean Wells just paying for it all themselves? Are we getting something for it at a discount to the water, or we finally get that?
We're getting water from the ocean.
I would have Ocean Wells pay for this.
What?
I would have Ocean Wells.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Mike was asking why we're splitting, what are you getting for splitting?
What's wrong with Jay's idea? Jay's idea was we put it out, we have say, okay, guys, we do it for X amount of time, 3 months, 2 months, and you guys let it kick in. Or
Well, I don't think they'll
tell us
follow
you're not gonna do
Well,
it.
the other part of it is,
Take the risk.
we want to be a client, because there's going to be a lot of lobbying effort. We're going to go to the governor's office, we're going to go to the other regulators, and so the water districts are the one that are going to be able to talk to these people. So the water districts need to be a client, we're the ones that get the water.
Okay, that's what
But I'm thinking, maybe,
We got lobbyists, we got lawyers, we got,
That's the nature of the beast.
I know. Come on, why don't we spend on this?
Well, I really don't.
Yeah, he's very good in that.
I do have one last topic. Again, on this, I'll say that the intent was not for you to make a decision again here. But to tee up the conversation, I think we need to come back to the board to make business pitch for this. But I was anticipating that we should do that. There's things that we can think about as we do that. Stephen just mentioned the possibility of those partners, when they do contribute, to contribute back to the beginning. These things, it's a tougher sell to the group, but we can certainly do that if that increases the level of comfort.
And maybe the money that we're investing now, shares.
Could you also, say it's in the reoccurring charge, say it's a $5,000 fee? We'll leave all 7 partners, now puts that money into a fund, we use only for that, so it's not a reoccurring charge, it's a legal fee.
Yeah.
And then if each manager is $5,000 signing fee, I mean, what's yours, 35,000, what's yours?
50,000.
And we're the smallest, these must have higher than 50.
Yeah.
So you give us $5,000 for the next 6 months each, or so they might have authority. But Anselmo, just the last thing on Anselmo, WP, since he gets a lot of customers like we do, saying, why don't you use ocean? This all started because our customers drove us and said, how come you guys aren't getting water from the ocean? WP has the same people saying to them, you're on the water, why don't you get an ocean well? And he says, yeah, we are developing, we're using ocean well. He's using this as his reason that he's looking at the ocean. He's not looking at the ocean in any other form than this. So we're helping him out.
So the last item I had on the list here was LA County Water Works District 29. Malibu, I think we've talked about a number of times, they are a critical infrastructure partner. We have interconnections with Malibu, they're relatively small, and we did use them during the fire. Those interconnections primarily helped District 29. We moved water from our South Peak tank to their South Peak tank. District 29 is interesting because they have access to Colorado River water through their connection with Metropolitan. So their connection to Metropolitan goes the other direction from ours. And so they also have a means to get Colorado River water, Diamond Valley Lake water into their district, which in turn could come to our district. We have an agreement with them for an interconnection on the far west side of the district on Edsel Canyon Road. That interconnection is strictly a one-way interconnection. It will provide water from us to them.
What's the size of the pipeline?
I think it's 20, it's 8 inch. It's an 8-inch interconnection. It will help them in the event of an emergency. Since policy, and more so with the Franklin fire and the Palisades fire, we've increasingly been thinking about and talking about the benefits of better interconnectivity between our two water systems. And this morning we were at the meeting for the Water Resilience Summit at the Los Angeles County Water Plant, and an element of that whole planning process is looking at better connecting water systems so that you can move water from across jurisdictional boundaries. A lot of our water systems are very limited in where they can move water, and it's strictly because of an imaginary line that represents a county boundary or a city line. And there's not really good reason for it to be that way. We saw that with the Cayugas interconnection, that our biggest neighbor, we had no interconnection with them. And so there is a trend in the water business and community to better connect our systems, and even to look at synergies between water systems. And I think, and we think, that there are potential synergies with Waterworks District 29 that have not been fully tapped. And it's not a new concept. For many, many years, there's been discussion about Waterworks District 29, whether it could be better, let's say, combined or consolidated with one of the neighboring water systems. It's never really come to fruition, largely because the infrastructure there is quite old. It was all part of, there were several mutual water companies there that were put together to form that water system. But that water system is vulnerable to emergency because it has a single feed of water that comes 20 plus miles from Culver City and runs along PCH, and their pipeline runs through a large slide area called Big Rock. And that slide every 5 to 10 years lets loose, and PCH moves, and that pipeline will break, and it entirely cuts off Malibu from water. Our interconnection with Malibu, both at Encinal and the possibility of a new interconnection that we did on Malibu Canyon Road, could really help to shore up that weakness in their water system. The reciprocal benefit to Las Virgenes could be that we now have access to Colorado River water via District 29. And then you think about Ocean Well and the possibility of Ocean Well. This now could be a means for Ocean Well water to move to Las Virgenes via District 29. So you start to put together all of these things, and there's a lot of different potential touch points where our relationship and partnership with District 29 could be more critical and could be mutually beneficial. Going back to the MOU that I talked about, and the fact that District 29 is already interested in Ocean Well, we could join together in that MOU. They would be one of the Ocean Well partners. It would also allow us to work with District 29 and explore whether there are opportunities for increased integration of our two water systems. And could there be synergies achieved that could lead to something down the road that could be more up to and including the possibility of a consolidation. And I'll just say that that's sort of a lot that I just put on the table, and that's not something that should be taken lightly. To do a consolidation of water systems is probably the most challenging, complex, difficult, technically, economically, and politically of almost anything you can do in the water business. But there could be some real benefits for both water systems if they were one, and if it was handled appropriately. So we have had some initial conversations with the county about this. Director Lewitt's been part of some of those conversations. Director Kordesky, we talked a little bit about it. This is a topic that we felt like was worth talking about with the whole board, and also thinking about, is there merit to looking at some type of an integration study down the road. And the way you would step into this is you would not jump all in on this. It is a very stepwise sequential process. You would begin by looking at the infrastructure assets of District 29 and Las Virgenes, and you prepare what's called an integration study. And you look at, could the infrastructure, if together, be stronger than separate? And what would be the cost to do that, and what would be the benefits? And then you have to also look at the economic part of that, and how would you pay for that? And then lastly, you have to look at the political elements of it, and how would that work from a governance standpoint. So I'll share that the county is open to having a discussion, which is I would say fairly significant willingness, because I would say normally when you approach another utility about a consolidation, it's kind of a significant turn. Now, I think if you say consolidation, I think they're not ready for that discussion, but they're open to the idea of jointly discussing system integration. And that could turn into a whole variety of things. It could just turn into additional connections between the water systems, and they stay completely separate as they are today. But it could also lead to something more. And so I wanted to share that, and also just put that on the table if there's interest in exploring that. And this JPA could also be a way to do that. And that could be a study that is done between Las Virgenes and District 29 through this JPA, and it could be jointly funded. And with some of the aftermath of the fire, there's a lot of interest in looking at some of these more, I would say, out-of-the-box alternatives.
Yeah, I'd say historically the issue has been that they were afraid to have efficient water systems because they don't want to turn Malibu into Miami Beach. But that's kind of been the old school in Malibu, and I'm working with a lot of their board members, city council people, and the fear of us coming in and having efficient water turned into Miami Beach is not really realized anymore. It's more about, they're more concerned with fires and getting in and out and disasters, and I think now is the right time. And what would be the next step we have to do to get to the next step? What do you need from this board to go to the next step?
Well, I think the first knowing that your initial reaction is not under those circumstances, don't look at this. But I think it would be to look at this JPA. We're already doing that for the ocean well. And so just having an open mind that this JPA could be a vehicle to look at this as well. And maybe talk with the county about a scope of work for a joint study. And that joint study, in my mind, would be jointly funded by the two agencies. And it would look at the technical elements of it first. Look at the infrastructure and how could there be synergies in the infrastructure between the two water systems.
So you're saying take this existing Burbank LA JPA, potentially expand it to 7 partners, and then inside of it have us have a side deal inside the JPA with District 29.
Yes.
Yes, I think that. I'm for it. I don't know if you guys think I'm for it.
That seems to be the.
What's the county? They have to bless this whole thing, because of the infrastructure.
Yeah, it's very difficult to consolidate with a non-willing partner. It's not impossible, but it's not a route that you want to do.
You want to do.
Yeah. So you really need a partner who wants to to support it and wants to do that. The county they manage 5 waterworks districts. It is not really, although it is part of their business, their core business is flood control and roadways. But they also do everything, they do a whole variety of things. The water systems, the 5 that they manage, they're all small. And there's a huge economy of scale in running a water system. It's a very difficult water system for them to run because it's very small and they have some of the highest rates in the whole county. And they have a hard time reinvesting in the infrastructure. It's difficult for them to generate enough income and net income to actually reinvest and improve the infrastructure.
That's the key issue. Will we be able to have enough rate, and Mark's been talking about this for 4 years, and I'm aware. So this is the key issue, is how to be viable, it's gotta be improved. So we don't want to take the sour zero and get worse.
Yeah, and the key principle of the economic side is when you do a water system consolidation, it is not born on the backs of the Las Virgenes right here. It might not be. So the water system and the improvements in order to get the adjoining water system up to standards needs to be borne by those customers. And so the best way to do that is in a consolidation is you combine the systems, you improve efficiency, supply them at a lower cost than the original provider, you roll that extra net income into the system and improve it. You get it up to standards where it's equivalent with, and you keep the rates at the current level, and then you get the system to a point where it's of the equivalent level to our system, and then you achieve rate parity. Then the rates will then become more.
I'll volunteer that I represent another municipal water district out in Paris last year. We took over the city of Paris' water system, and it was just as David described. You had this system that needed help. And so the big rates, the Eastern came in and put that system in it, and as to rates, we're phasing in over time to get those people back to all the Eastern people. So, because it was a bit of a sticker shock. I'm not sure how we compare to 29, but as Dave described it, that's kind of the process you use. You kind of feather it in over time.
If you guess the average house in Malibu, if you had in the $50 million homes, it would be $3 million in average home, and for them to pay a one-time fee out of whatever the number is to get reliable water. They have one pipe that comes up PCH at Big Rock. And you got floods, mudslides, earthquake, fire, and that thing goes, they're gonna be looking people water bottles in the truck. So if you say to them, we can give you a resistant, resilient water supply, and it's gonna cost you maybe another $10,000 one-time fee, they're gonna be running at you saying, you're taking that, thank you.
It's gonna take 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, that's where we gotta start.
This is a long-term process. It's not a quick thing.
So a couple of questions, Ken, which I didn't get answered before correctly. What's the size of the pipe that runs along PCH?
It varies in size. I can tell you what I know is the size of the pipe on PCH at the bottom of Las Virgenes Road and Albert Canyon Road is about 30 inch diameter.
It's 30. Yes.
It gets smaller. It gets smaller as it goes west towards.
And then what about heading east?
Dave might be one.
Yeah, it's 30 inch at its largest, and then it's like a tree system. So
Sure.
as it gets further west,
Let's
it goes to 24 inch, and then it gets smaller.
But
and smaller.
what's the key issue is what's the quality of the pipe? How is it? So we're talking about the whole thing, the whole 30 inch, the whole run from Big Rock west?
The pipe goes all the way to Culver City.
It's all the way to Culver City, so it's a huge piece of business.
So that's where I was gonna ask the question. We just had a study showing us $1.5 million, $4.5 million, $6 million to upgrade alley pipes. What do you think it would be to upgrade their pipes?
So that's kind of this whole study is what that's about. It's looking at that and what level of investment we needed at what pipes.
What was that study?
It actually, a lot of the work has been done. In fact, I don't think it would cost that much. But, who does this thing? We don't, it would be a consultant. There's a number of consultants. There are firms that actually specialize in doing this.
Like Eric can just do it on the weekends.
Just ask AI to do it, yeah.
That is the last time.
Give me the result.
They're talking about putting a new sewer line in there. Where? It's Malibu. Now's the time to do it.
Meeting was falling apart.
So that would be the time to run a parallel water line.
Wall line down Burgess Canyon Road. There's no waste water line in there. We have to be 10 feet.
All right, and with that, unless there's any more comments, at 4:57,
That's gonna be.
I went to 4:30.